Chapter 519. It's okay. The owner of Blue Night was the same as the owner of the Hot Spring Club. Thinking of what Su Qingsang had told him, Hua Jinyao decided to go there himself. That man had a powerful background. If anything happened, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. But if it was Yang Wenchang, things would be different. Find a place to park the car and wait for my call. I'll go in with Ding Hong. Hua Jinyao and Ding Qing got out of the car and walked to the gate of Blue Night together. Ding Qing seemed a little worried. She even hesitated. Hua Jinyao glanced at her and said, "It's okay. Just act normal." Ding Qing nodded. She looked at the magnificent signboard, then at Hua Jinyao and said, "President Hua, won't we be easily recognized if we go in like this?" Hua Jinyao stopped and glanced at Ding Qing. Because of what happened tonight. She wasn't wearing the professional suit she wore during the day. Instead, she was wearing a simple black dress and a beige windbreaker. He thought for a while, then said in a lower voice, "Come with me." Okay. Ding Qing was about 3 steps away from Hua Jinyao. Because of what he said, she quickened her pace and walked to his side. They walked a few steps side by side. There seemed to be a small stone on the road. Ding Qing suddenly twisted her foot. She lost her balance and fell towards Hua Jinyao. He had to reach out his hand to steady her. Ding Qing's face was pale. She looked around and found that no one was looking at them. She said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, President Hua. I was too careless." "It's okay." Hua Jinyao thought that Ding Qing did that because she was nervous. Besides, he also saw the stone on the road. "Can you stand still?" "I can." Ding Qing stood up, but her foot hurt a little. She sucked in a cold breath. She looked at Hua Jinyao. "President Hua, I think I sprained my foot." They were only a few steps away from the gate of Blue Night. Seeing that, Hua Jinyao reached out his arm and said, "Can you help me walk?" "This." Ding Qing hesitated. "I don't think it's a good idea. It won't be good if people misunderstand." "It's okay." Hua Jinyao was focused on the meeting with Qiao Hong. "It's just a show. Let's go." Ding Qing clenched her teeth, but at last she took Hua Jinyao's arm. With Hua Jinyao's help, she didn't look abnormal when she walked. "Thank you, President Hua," Ding Qing said in a low voice. Hua Jinyao didn't take it to heart. "After seeing Qiao Hong, I'll take you to the doctor." "Thank you, President Hua. I'll go home and apply some ointment." Hua Jinyao didn't insist. The two of them entered the door together. What Hua Jinyao didn't notice was that a camera had captured the scene of the two of them walking into the Blue Night hand in hand. Lin City. Old Master Li's birthday was spent with the group of relatives at noon. In the evening, only his family would have dinner together. This year it was quieter than in previous years. In the past there was Su Qinghui and Su Peixian. Today the two of them were gone, but Su Qingsang was there. Her cooking skills were average and she wasn't particularly good at it. However, ever since she married Hua Jinyao, she had put some effort into it. So today she took the initiative to cook a bowl of noodles for the old man. "Grandpa, happy birthday to you." Hua Jinyao had already prepared Old Master Li's birthday present. It was a pine tree. It wasn't an ordinary pine tree. It was carved from a whole piece of jade. The gift was delivered in the morning. The jade was of high quality and it was made by a master. The green color of the jade made the pine tree look especially tall and straight. It implied that Old Master Li would live as long as the Nanshan Mountain. It was obvious that the gift had been found with great effort. It was a good gift. Old Master Li liked it very much. However, no matter how good the gift was, it was a gift from Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang didn't know what else to give. After thinking for a while, she decided that cooking a bowl of noodles for Old Master Li was more appropriate. Good, good, good. Old Master Li looked at the noodles that his granddaughter brought out and said the word "good" 3 times in a row. Old Master Li didn't lack anything at the moment. For him, the most important thing was the thought. Many years ago, Li Qianxue had cooked for him to please Su Qinghui. It was the first time that he had eaten food cooked by a junior, even if it was just a simple bowl of noodles. "Grandpa, I'm not good at cooking. Please don't blame me." Su Qingsang's face was a little bitter. She wasn't particularly confident in her cooking. "It looks delicious." Old Master Li was quite generous. Looking at the bowl of noodles, his eyes were full of admiration. "This cooking can't be wrong. You try it first." After Su Qingsang said that, she looked at Li Qianxue and said, "Mom, there's more in the kitchen. Do you want to try it too?" "Okay." Li Qianxue's eyes were a little red. Su Peixian didn't do any chores and Su Yusin would never enter the kitchen. Now that the whole family was eating noodles cooked by Su Qingsang, they were all surprised and a little touched. Especially Li Qianxue. She had really done everything to please Su Qinghui. She tried to learn cooking and cook for Su Qinghui. However, the final result was not satisfactory. The soup was either salty or not good enough. When the vegetables were stir-fried, they were either raw or burnt. She couldn't control the degree, but she didn't give up and always wanted to try again. In the end, she found that no matter how she tried, Su Qinghui wouldn't love her because of it, so she gave up. It's delicious. Su Yusin was the first to speak. It was obviously a very ordinary noodles, but he tasted like a feast. Really? Su Qingsang looked at him, her eyes full of disbelief. Why don't I believe it? You're not happy that I praised you? It's delicious. Li Qinxue and Old Master Li were also full of praise. Su Qingsang knew very well that it wasn't that the noodles she cooked were really delicious. It was just that Grandpa and the others gave her face. The family had a joyful and harmonious meal. That day, Su Qingsang felt that time passed very quickly, but more than that, she was happy. She really wanted to share her feelings with Hu Jinyao at this time, so she went upstairs without even taking a shower. Instead, she called Hu Jinyao first. However, no one picked up Hu Jinyao's call. Su Qingsang didn't think too much about it. She dialed again, but still no one picked up. Looking at the time, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. In the past, Hu Jinyao should have been home at this time. Su Qingsang's first reaction was that the matter with Hu Jinyao's company should be very tricky. At least he couldn't handle it in a short time. Su Qingsang wasn't unhappy. She was just a little worried and a little distressed. After sending a message to Hu Jinyao, telling him to take care of himself no matter how late he was, she put the phone aside. Since Su Qingsang had returned to Lin City, she naturally had to find Shi Mengwan. Early in the morning, she sent a message to Shi Mengwan asking where she was. Knowing that she was back, Shi Mengwan couldn't be more happy. The two of them agreed on a time and place to meet. Su Qingsang hung up the phone, lay on the bed and casually browsed through the local news and WeChat public accounts. After Su Qingsang went to Rong City, she followed a few local WeChat public accounts in Rong City. The local news she was reading now was naturally the local news of Rong City. They were all ordinary things. After casually browsing through a few, Su Qingsang planned to close it. However, at this time Rong City Online, which she followed, released today's news. The news was about a certain clubhouse. It said that a few rich second-generation rich kids in Rong City had a conflict with someone in a nightclub, then smashed the nightclub's venue and almost caused a riot. Su Qingsang wasn't interested in this kind of news. These second-generation rich kids were just a little rich, but compared to real aristocratic families, they were far from being rich. She had also attended a few of Hu Jinyao's gatherings with his childhood friends, but none of his friends were like this. Just as she was about to close the news, her eyes fell on the accompanying photo of the news. There were two people in the photo, both of whom Su Qingsang knew. One was the woman she had spoken to the other day, and the other was Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang looked at the photo for a moment, and her mind went blank for a moment. She thought she had seen it wrong. However, no matter how she looked at it, that person was Hu Jinyao. The other woman was the one she had met at the company. Su Qingsang read the news again. Because the news about the other two rich kids was relatively big, mobile phones were now popular. She only browsed through the news, and not only did she find the photos of the two rich kids fighting, but she also found the video of the fight on the local portal. In the video, Su Qingsang didn't pay attention to the scene of a group of people fighting. She only stared at Hu Jinyao and the woman sitting not far away. From the video, it could be seen that the woman had been sitting close to Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao didn't push her away. Not only did he not push her away, but he also reached out to help her when the woman was about to get up. Then the woman left for a while and came back. When she came back, she threw herself into Hu Jinyao's arms. The video ended here. Su Qingsang watched the video again and her expression was a little ugly. Of course, she was willing to believe Hu Jinyao, and she also believed that he must have a reason to go to that kind of place with that woman. But, she thought of Hu Jinyao's hand on that woman's body, and the way that woman threw herself at Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang suddenly became angry. Even if she had misunderstood, couldn't Hu Jinyao stay away from that woman? She was angry, so she took out her phone and called Hu Jinyao without thinking. Hu Jinyao didn't answer the first time and only answered the second time. Qingsang? Hu Jinyao's voice sounded a little hoarse as if he hadn't slept well. Su Qingsang could hear it and her heart ached a little. Her determination to find Hu Jinyao and ask him didn't decrease at all, but her expression became a lot calmer. Chapter 520. No. Hu Jinyao didn't expect Xiao Hong to lie to him. He did not appear at Blue Night at all yesterday. They called Xiao Hong but he didn't pick up. Later, Ding Qing used her phone to call Xiao Hong. Qiao Hong didn't answer but sent her a message. He said that he didn't want to go to jail and that he saw the police when he was coming. It turned out that the fight between the playboys had attracted someone to report to the police. Qiao Hong thought that Hu Jinyao had sent the police to arrest him, so he didn't show up. Hu Jinyao didn't expect such a misunderstanding. He gestured for Ding Qing to comfort Qiao Hong. Ding Qing kept assuring him that those policemen weren't coming for Qiao Hong, so that he could calm down. In the end, Qiao Hong agreed to give Hu Jinyao and the others another chance, but he couldn't tell Ding Qing the exact location until tonight. Because of this, the three of them had wasted their time yesterday. Ding Qing was especially angry. She kept accusing Qiao Hong of breaking his promise. She seemed to be more nervous than the boss. Is the problem very difficult? If Hu Jinyao was like this, the problem must be very tricky. Su Qingsang's tone carried a hint of worry. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. That's good. Su Qingsang couldn't help but ask, Jinyao, it was Saturday yesterday. Did you go to see Grandpa? Yes. Grandpa also asked me to tell you to send his regards. Oh. Su Qingsang believed him. So you didn't go out at night? You live in the old mansion? Just as Hu Jinyao was about to answer, the computer in front of him alerted him that a new email had arrived. He opened the mailbox and casually replied, Yes, I live in the old house. In fact, when Hu Jinyao stayed in the company yesterday, he had been discussing with Yang Wenchang and the others what they should do if Qiao Hong insisted on selling the confidential information to a rival company. Hu Jinyao always planned for the worst. He hoped that things would develop in a good direction. However, if the other party didn't keep their promise, he could arrest Qiao Hong or sue the other party's company. However, all of these things would bring negative consequences to Tianyu Group. Either way, Hu Jinyao needed to think of a way to deal with it. The most ideal outcome would be to find Qiao Hong and retrieve the secret. Minimize the loss. In the worst-case scenario, Qiao Hong would betray his company. At that time, both sides would perish together. Qiao Hong and his rival company wouldn't have a good ending, but Tianyu would still suffer heavy losses. Su Qingsang clenched her fists. She blinked and suddenly realized that Hu Jinyao was lying. He was lying to himself. Are you in the company now? Have you had breakfast? I ate it. Hu Jinyao read the contents of the email. His eyebrows were knitted together so tightly that a mosquito could be squeezed between his eyebrows. Jinyao. Su Qingsang told herself not to be paranoid and to trust him. Did you really stay at the old house last night? Yeah. Hu Jinyao moved the mouse and scrolled down. Su Qingsang pursed her lips and added, I haven't been home for 2 weeks. Did your mother say anything? What can she say? Hu Jinyao stared at the photos in the email. No matter what she says, I'll just ignore it. That's true. Su Qingsang didn't ask any more. She could tell that Hu Jinyao's attitude was perfunctory. Then you go back to your work. I'll go shopping with Mengwan later. Okay. Hu Jinyao was about to hang up. He thought for a moment and added, if you want to stay in Lin City for a few more days with your mother, ask for leave. I can talk to the hospital for you. Of course, he knew that Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue hadn't known each other for a long time. He also wanted to spend more time with the Li family. However, Su Qingsang thought of something else. Okay, I got it. Su Qingsang didn't want to think about Hu Jinyao like that, but she couldn't help it. He was thinking that it would be more convenient for him to do something when she wasn't at home. Was that so? After hanging up, Su Qingsang thought about it. She was willing to believe Hu Jinyao, but she still couldn't help but call the old house of the Hua family. Coincidentally, the person who answered the phone was Old Master Hua. Grandpa. Qingsang? Old Master Hua recognized Su Qingsang's voice almost immediately. He was very happy to receive a call from his granddaughter-in-law. He didn't notice Zhang Yichen, who came to visit this morning, because his ears moved slightly when he heard the 2 words. However, that was all. In the end, he picked up the tea in front of him and sipped it gently. His expression didn't change at all. Well, Grandpa, I just wanted to say hello to you. I can't come back to accompany you this weekend. It's okay. I heard from Jinyao. He said it's your grandpa's birthday. Remember to say hello to Yongfeng for me. Okay. I will. My grandpa misses you too. He asked me to say hello to you. He's too polite. He has a lot of things to do at home these days. When he's free, he asked him to come to Rong City to play. Okay. I'll tell Grandpa. After saying this, Su Qingsang said casually, Jinyao has been very busy recently. He always listens to you. You must talk to him and ask him not to live in the company. It's easy to catch a cold and he can't sleep well. He sleeps in the company? Then I'll talk to him later. Speaking of which, I told him to pay more attention to his health when he came last time. There's no end to the company's business. Old Master Ho was also a smart person. What couldn't he see? In fact, he also knew that the Hui Yifan brothers had been doing a lot recently. However, they were all his grandchildren, so he didn't want to interfere too much. More importantly, he believed in Hu Jinyao's ability and that he would handle it well. Yes. He's always busy with work and doesn't come back to accompany Grandpa. He hasn't come back to see you for a few days, right? It's okay. I know he's busy. When he's done, he can come to see me again. Su Qingsang's heart slightly tightened. What else did she not understand? Hu Jinyao didn't go back to the old house yesterday. He was really lying and he really lied to her. After talking with old Master Hua for a while, she finally hung up the phone. Su Qingsang sat by the bed and once again looked at the video of the fight. She didn't want to think badly of Hu Jinyao. But why would Hu Jinyao lie to her? Even if he told her directly that he went to a nightclub with that woman, she wouldn't be angry. She believed that he did everything for a reason. However, no matter how much she trusted him, she wouldn't like him lying to her. Some things couldn't be explained clearly over the phone. He could only ask when they met. No matter what, she was willing to give him a chance to explain. She was also willing to believe that Hu Jinyao was not a man who cheated in his marriage. She put her phone aside. It was almost time for the appointment with Shi Mengwan. She could only put it aside for now. Everything could wait until she returned to Rong City. Chapter 521. Ding Qing hung up the phone and looked at Hu Jinyao and Yang Wenchang. Xiao Hong said tonight at 9 o'clock. We'll meet at Charm of Night. Because of what happened before, Xiao Hong didn't trust Hu Jinyao anymore. Now he was only willing to contact Ding Qing. Hu Jinyao furrowed his brows. Why did Xiao Hong always choose a nightclub or a nightclub? President Hua. Ding Qing looked at Hu Jinyao. She was eager to solve the problem. Why don't I go tonight? No need. I'll go with you. Hu Jinyao glanced at Ding Qing while speaking. Is your foot okay? Yesterday Ding Qing's foot had been sprained by a small stone. Later, when they were fighting in Blue Night, she accidentally tripped on a piece of glass that was thrown on the ground. Although he reached out to hold her in time, her foot was still swollen. Ding Qing's injury was a work-related injury. As the boss, Hu Jinyao naturally had to care about his employee's injury. Thank you for your concern, President Hua. My foot is fine. Don't worry. I'm wearing a pair of flats today. I won't be a burden to you again. Ding Qing said with a guilty look on her face. What happened yesterday has nothing to do with you. It was an accident. Your foot is injured. You shouldn't go today. I'll go with Yang Wenchang. But I'm the one who contacted Xiao Hong. Ding Qing tried her best to persuade him. President Hua, I'm the one who contacted Xiao Hong and I'm the one who agreed to meet him. If he finds out that I'm not there, he might think that we lied to him again. That'll be really troublesome. President Hua's secretary Ding has a point. Yang Wenchang believed that it was impossible to stop Ding Qing from getting involved. Besides, Ding Qing is a woman. It'll be easier for Xiao Hong to let his guard down. Yeah. I'll go in first and I'll text you when I see Xiao Hong. Ding Qing's suggestion was good. Hu Jinyao thought for a while then agreed. Alright, you can go with us. But you don't have to rush to ask Xiao Hong for the thing. Comfort him first. Let him calm down. I know what I'm doing, President Hua. As long as Xiao Hong shows up, I'm confident that he'll let down his guard and be willing to talk to us. All right. It was the weekend and there was no one else in the office. After the three of them discussed what to do, they each went to make their own arrangements. Hu Jinyao thought about the series of things that had happened recently and felt as if he had overlooked something important. Charm of the Night was also a nightclub, but it wasn't as big as Blue Night. Charm of Night's location was also a bit more remote than Blue Night's. Hu Jinyao knew that Xiao Hong didn't want to run into the police again. Just like the day before, Ding Qing was responsible for contacting Xiao Hong, then she walked into Charm of Night. Hu Jinyao followed Ding Qing. Because Ding Qing's foot was injured, Hu Jinyao helped her up the stairs again. Thank you, President Hua, Ding Qing said in a low voice. But you don't have to help me. I'm afraid that if Xiao Hong sees it, he might think that our relationship is different. You think too much. Hu Jinyao didn't even blink or look at Ding Qing. Xiao Hong knows that I'm married. I won't think in that direction. That's good. Ding Qing seemed to be relieved. Hu Jinyao finally glanced at her and said, What? Are you afraid that Xiao Hong might misunderstand you? I'm not afraid that Xiao Hong might misunderstand me. I'm afraid that others might misunderstand me. Ding Qing's voice was very low. I just met a nice guy and I'm planning to date him. I don't want him to misunderstand me before we even start dating. Hu Jinyao nodded. He relaxed a little because of Ding Qing's words. Yeah, it's okay. If he really misunderstands you, I can explain for you. Thank you in advance, President Hua. Ding Qing's voice sounded cheerful, which made the tense moment a lot more relaxed. The benefits of Tianyu Group were quite good. Not only were the benefits good, but Hu Jinyao wasn't a person who would mistreat his employees. Zhang Yang, who had been working for him, was excellent at his job. This time his wife was having a baby, and he wanted to take a vacation. Hu Jinyao immediately agreed. As for Ding Qing, Hu Jinyao approved of her hard work in the past 2 days. She was a good subordinate and that was all. The two of them entered Charm of Night together. In order to avoid a repeat of the previous incident, the two of them chose a corner and sat down. Hu Jinyao sat down and looked around. This place was noisier than Blue Night, and there were more people here. If Xiao Hong showed up in a place like this, it would be easier for him to get away. The strange feeling in his heart came again, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong at the moment. President Hua, do you think Xiao Hong will come today? Hearing Ding Qing's words, Hu Jinyao glanced at her and shook his head. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that he will come. Today was Sunday and tomorrow was Monday. He had to report to the managers about the progress of the project. Recently, Hu Yifan had been doing a lot of things. If Hu Jinyao didn't want Hu Yifan to be more arrogant, he couldn't make any more mistakes. Ding Qing stopped talking. She seemed to be nervous as well. She took out her phone and was about to call Xiao Hong again, but Hu Jinyao stopped her. You don't have to call him anymore. Hu Jinyao's expression was a little cold. If he doesn't come, you won't be able to do anything. If he comes, if you keep calling him, he will think that we need to beg him. No matter how bad the situation was, Hu Jinyao didn't want to lose the initiative. He was lucky today. Xiao Hong finally showed up. After he walked in, he walked around for a long time, then walked to where Hu Jinyao and Ding Qing were sitting. Hu Jinyao was sitting inside while Ding Qing was sitting outside. That was why Xiao Hong didn't see Hu Jinyao at first. When he saw Hu Jinyao, he wanted to leave, but he found that Yang Wenchang had come in and was following him. Yang Wenchang blocked his way, so Xiao Hong couldn't leave. He had no choice but to sit down in front of them. This is not a good place to talk. I've booked a private room upstairs. Let's talk there, said Yang Wenchang. Hu Jinyao nodded. Xiao Hong knew that he couldn't leave now, so he followed them upstairs. After entering the room, Xiao Hong glared at Ding Qing. Miss Ding, you broke your promise. Xiao Hong, I don't think I ever said that I came here alone. Although Ding Qing said that, she felt a little guilty. Xiao Hong didn't say anything. He stood there looking very upset. Xiao Hong, you know that, right? What you're doing now is against the law. This project of Tianyu Group was very important. Hu Jinyao was in charge of it from the beginning to the end. He was the only one who knew how much he valued this project. All the employees who worked on this project had to sign confidentiality agreements. What Xiao Hong did today was against the law. Hu Jinyao knew that and so did Xiao Hong. As expected, when Xiao Hong heard Hu Jinyao's words, he immediately weakened. His voice trembled a little. President Hua, I know I'm wrong but I had no choice. Where is it? Hu Jinyao didn't want to hear Xiao Hong talk about his so-called difficulties. Many people in this world lived hard lives, but not everyone would choose to take the unorthodox path. I didn't bring it with me. Xiao Hong was obviously a little guilty when he said that. Why would I bring such an important thing with me? Hu Jinyao curled up the corner of his mouth and stared at Xiao Hong coldly. His voice was very low. Your condition? I want money. Xiao Hong was shocked by Hu Jinyao's imposing manner. His voice even softened. How much? 1 million. Xiao Hong wasn't greedy. His girlfriend needed hundreds of thousands of yuan to get a kidney transplant, and he had to wait for the source of the kidney. In the meantime, he had to receive all kinds of treatments. In fact, 1 million yuan might not be enough to solve his problem. 2 million. Hu Jinyao was quite generous. I can transfer the money to you right now, but you have to take us to get the thing first. Xiao Hong rubbed his hands and looked at Hu Jinyao. I have another condition. What? I want to go back to work in Tianyu Group. Impossible. Hu Jinyao's expression was cold, leaving no room for negotiation. You should have read the company's employee rules. I will never let you go back to work in the company. Thinking of the good benefits of Tianyu Group, Xiao Hong hesitated for a moment. I just want to go back to work. I said it's impossible. Hu Jiniao released his aura. He just sat there, but he gave people the feeling that he was a cheetah staring at its prey. Xiao Hong, you don't need me to remind you of the consequences of what you did, do you? If I call the police now and send you to the police station, your life will be over. Of course Xiao Hong knew that. He felt the sweat on his back. You don't dare to do that. If you call the police, I will ask my friend to give the thing to Anshu and Company. Then you will suffer a great loss. Really? Hu Jiniao smiled. He took out his phone and pressed the number 101, but he didn't make the call. Instead, he looked at Xiao Hong with certainty. You can try. What will happen if I call the police now? Xiao Hong didn't speak, but Hu Jiniao took the phone and stood in front of Xiao Hong in 2 steps. Did you think that I didn't make any preparations before coming to find you? Hu Jiniao was 188 meters tall, much taller than Xiao Hong. He stood in front of him and released his aura. His eyes were sharp. Yes, you can give the thing to Anshuan and I can guarantee that they will want it from you. But if you give it to me, I will call the police. You have signed a confidentiality agreement. You can't escape from jail. And Anshuan's people dare to buy the confidential documents of Tianyu Group. What do you think will happen to them? Chapter 522. Hu Jiniao put his phone away and said, Xiao Hong, you're a smart man. I admit that you've contributed a lot to this project. I'll give you 2 million today. Take the money and give me the stuff. As for going back to Tianyu, don't even think about it. After you get the money, you're not allowed to work in the same industry for 2 years. Why should I trust you? You have no choice but to trust me now. Hu Jiniao's voice was extremely cold. If I want to ban you now, believe it or not, you won't be able to find a job in the whole of China. Xiao Hong remained silent. He knew that Hu Jiniao was capable of doing that. He struggled to make his last request. I want a bank transfer, not a check. Okay. I'll transfer 1 million to you now. I'll give you the rest after you give me the stuff. Let's go now. Without further ado, Hu Jiniao made Xiao Hong agree to his conditions with a few words, half threatening and half tempting. Neither Yang Wenchang nor Ding Qing had a chance to say anything since he started talking. Yang Wenchang was fine. He had worked for Hu Jiniao for a long time, and he had seen Hu Jiniao's fierce side before. However, this was the first time that Ding Qing had seen Hu Jiniao like this. She sat next to Hu Jiniao and had a strange feeling in her heart. She no longer came to Tianyu for some purpose. She was simply Hu Jiniao's subordinate now. She saw a completely different side of her boss. She looked at Hu Jiniao deeply, and her heart was filled with emotions that even she couldn't suppress. She clearly knew that the emotional change could be called a heartbeat. When they returned to the company, it was already past midnight. They had followed Xiao Hong to the place he told them to take out the stuff. They didn't expect Xiao Hong to be so bold as to put the stuff in the safe box of a suite in a 4-star hotel. Hu Jiniao didn't search Xiao Hong's home, nor did he send people to the hotel to look for him. He probably didn't expect Xiao Hong to be so bold. However, he didn't register under his own name. Even if he sent people to search all the hotels in Rong City, they wouldn't know which hotel Xiao Hong was staying in. Now that the stuff was back, Hu Jiniao kept it safe again. He turned around and looked at his 2 subordinates. There was no need to mention Yang Wenchang. After following him for so many years, he was experienced in everything he did. He knew what he was thinking the most. Whatever it was, it had already been done before the order had been given. As for Ding Qing, although she hadn't been here for long, she had been doing well in the past few days. You've all worked hard today. Go back and rest early. Hu Jiniao rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He felt that things had been solved too easily. Xiao Hong's compromise was within his expectations. He had already blocked all of Xiao Hong's escape routes. 2 million was nothing to him. But to him, this matter had been solved too easily and it felt surreal. Yang Wenchang stood there, not in a hurry to leave. Hu Jiniao glanced at him, then turned to look at Ding Qing. Secretary Ding, you can go back and rest first. All right. Ding Qing knew that Yang Wenchang had something to say, so she didn't linger. She lowered her head and quickly left. However, after she left, she did not leave immediately. Closing the door, she pressed her ear against the door. The soundproofing in Hu Jiniao's office was so good that she couldn't hear anything. In the end, she had no choice but to leave. In the office, Yang Wenchang sat across from Hu Jiniao. Neither of them had rested well for the past few days, and neither of them looked well. President Hua, I have a feeling that something is wrong with this matter. Tell me about it. Hu Jiniao had the same feeling, but he also wanted to hear Yang Wenchang's opinion. I just feel that it's too simple. Yang Wenchang didn't believe that Xiao Hong had gone through all this trouble just for 2 million. They both knew the value of this document. More importantly, if Xiao Hong had really sold it to a rival company, even if they went to court and sued the rival company, Tianyu Group would still suffer a great loss. Also, it's too easy to solve. Today, Xiao Hong had agreed to the terms without much struggle. On the surface, it seemed that he had done so under Hua Jinyao's pressure, but in fact it felt weird. Hua Jinyao looked at Yang Wenchang. Yang Wenchang was indeed his most valued assistant. Go and find out who Xiao Hong has been in contact with before. Or, apart from the 2 million I gave him, if there was any other unknown income in his bank account. It doesn't have to be the bank account. There are other accounts as well. Check them all. Yes. Yang Wenchang nodded and turned to leave. Hua Jinyao stopped him. You don't have to do it now. It's the same tomorrow. One more thing. Not only do we have to investigate him, but we also have to investigate his family. Xiao Hong wasn't stupid. He might not use his own account to do something like that. Yang Wenchang immediately understood what he meant. Hua Jinyao waved his hand. Alright, go back to sleep. Don't come tomorrow morning. Have a good rest at home. Looking into Hua Jinyao's tired eyes, Yang Wenchang knew that he was the most tired one. President Hua, I don't need to rest tomorrow. You, on the other hand, have a tough battle to fight tomorrow. Don't worry. I know. Hua Jinyao sat up straight. His eyes were sharp. Those people want to see me make a fool of myself. I'll make a fool of myself first. Yang Wenchang lowered his eyes. Only then did he feel relieved. He quickly walked out. Hua Jinyao stayed in the office. He didn't rush home. He was still thinking about all the problems he had encountered during this period of time. Then he connected the dots one by one and found the key point. Su Qingsang walked out of the airport and tightened her coat. It was the end of spring, but the weather in Rong City was still a bit cold. Compared with the warm Lin City, it was much colder here. She didn't rush to the taxi lane. Hua Jinyao said that he would send someone to pick her up. Su Qingsang just had to wait here. She called Hua Jinyao before she got on the plane. Hua Jinyao asked her why she didn't stay in Lin City for a few more days. Not only him, but Shi Mingwan and the Li family also wanted her to stay for a few more days. She wanted to stay too, but the thought of Hua Jinyao going to a nightclub with another woman made her feel very uncomfortable. Plus, she had something to do at the hospital, so she refused their invitation to stay. She only said that she would fly back to Lin City to visit them when she had time. She took the earliest flight of the day back to Rong City. However, as soon as she pushed her luggage out of the ramp, she saw someone who shouldn't be there. Chapter 523. Su Qingsang's eyebrows twitched when she saw the woman. She immediately thought of what the two of them had done in the video. Su Qingsang stopped for a second and stood there without moving. His hand on the luggage handle tightened because of this. It was only for a few seconds and she quickly relaxed her strength. Then she smiled and watched the woman walk towards her. Su Qingsang looked at the woman from head to toe as she walked towards her. She was wearing a white Givenchy trench coat with a belt and a pair of Prada suede boots. Her hair was tied up and there was a faint smile on her face. The lavender eyeshadow made her look even more charming and seductive. Su Qingsang had to admit that the woman in front of her was indeed exquisite. More importantly, she clearly knew the advantages of her appearance, and she made full use of it. She was different from Hua Jinyao, who always wore flat shoes because she had to perform surgeries. The woman's high heels made her look much taller than Hua Jinyao, which made her look even more imposing. Ding Qing walked towards Su Qingsang step by step. Her face was calm and her smile was appropriate. Su Qingsang watched her approach her step by step. Her eyes darkened a little but soon returned to normal. "Hello, Mrs. Hua." Ding Qing walked up to Su Qingsang and said, "I'm Ding Qing, President Hua's secretary. President Hua asked me to pick you up." In fact, Hua Jinyao had a meeting in the morning, and he had arranged for Yang Wenchang to pick him up. However, Ding Qing happened to overhear it. Yang Wenchang had found out what Hua Jinyao had asked him to look into yesterday, so Yang Wenchang was a little hesitant. Ding Qing offered to pick Su Qingsang up. "I met Mrs. Hua when she came to the company. I know her. Don't worry. I will bring Mrs. Hua back safely." Okay. Hua Jinyao had witnessed Ding Qing's abilities recently, so he didn't think too much about it and agreed to let her pick Hua Jinyao up. Now she stood in front of Su Qingsang with a faint smile on her face. Her red lips were delicate, and she reached out her hand to Su Qingsang. Her hands were different from the paleness of her palms, which were caused by the disinfectant she had been using all the time in the lab or on the operating table in the hospital. Her slender fingers were painted with crimson nail polish, and there were even beautiful flower patterns drawn on them. Su Qingsang glanced at the man's hand and met his eyes. He was still calm, as if the provocation in the eyes of the person who said those words to her last time was just an illusion. "Hello, Mrs. Hua." She didn't reach out her hand for the first time, but Ding Qing was very polite. She reached out her hand a little bit more. "I'm Ding Qing. President Hua asked me to pick you up." Su Qingsang looked at Ding Qing's hand, then finally took it. It was soft. She held it for a moment then let it go. "Where is Hu Jinyao?" "President Hua has an important meeting, so he can't leave." While speaking, Ding Qing took a step forward and was about to pull Su Qingsang's luggage. "Mr. Yang is very busy too. I'm the only one who has free time. So I'm here to pick you up." She pulled Su Qingsang's luggage closer to her eyes and turned to look at her with a smile. "Mrs. Hua, you don't mind, do you?" "Of course." Su Qingsang blinked and said, "I have to thank you." "You're welcome. This is my job." While speaking, Ding Qing pointed outside and said, "Mrs. Hua, my car is parked over there. Let's go this way." "Okay." Su Qingsang nodded. She didn't take her luggage from Ding Qing's hands, but walked quietly beside her. She didn't have much luggage, just one suitcase. Before she came here, Li Qinshui and Old Master Li had picked out a lot of nice things for her to bring back as gifts. So Su Qingsang had 2 suitcases. Seeing that Ding Qing was pulling 2 suitcases on each side, Su Qingsang said something. "Miss Ding, I'll take one." "It's okay. We're almost at my car anyway. It's not far." Ding Qing was wearing a pair of high heels, but her steps were still steady. Su Qingsang glanced at her feet, then calmly withdrew her gaze. Everyone had their own strengths and characteristics. She wouldn't feel bad just because Ding Qing's makeup was better than hers and she didn't look as smart and capable as Ding Qing. The two of them left the airport hall and walked to the underground parking lot. Ding Qing put her luggage in the trunk, then walked around to open the car door for Su Qingsang. "Mrs. Huo, please." Su Qingsang slightly frowned but soon smiled and turned to look at her. "Thank you." Su Qingsang didn't pretend to be polite. She got in the car directly. She watched Ding Qing walk to the other side of the car, get in and start the car. From the beginning until now, Ding Qing didn't seem to have any problems. However, Su Qingsang wouldn't forget the words that Ding Qing had said to her earlier. She wouldn't forget the way that Ding Qing threw herself at Hu Jinyao in the video. She didn't want to think badly of people, but she didn't think that people were good either. Especially Ding Qing. She had every reason to suspect that this woman had an ulterior motive. To put it more directly, she had an ulterior motive towards Hu Jinyao. She said that she was Hu Jinyao's secretary, so Hu Jinyao's secretary and Hu Jinyao met each other every day. A man and a woman, as well as a superior and a subordinate, spent at least 8 hours a day together. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes and stopped thinking. She didn't want to suspect Hu Jinyao. No matter how confused she was, she would wait until she saw Hu Jinyao and ask him herself. Su Qingsang had woken up early in the morning to catch a flight, so she was very sleepy. However, Ding Qing was driving so she couldn't rest in the car. She was still thinking about the video and the scene where Ding Qing and Hu Jinyao hugged each other. She almost blurted out and questioned the woman, but she held back. Ding Qing didn't mind that she didn't speak. "Mrs. Hua, I didn't have a chance to talk to you when you came to the company last time. In fact, when the girls in our company found out that Mr. Hua was married, many female employees were heartbroken because of it." Ding Qing's eyes met Su Qingsang's in the rearview mirror. Ding Qing seemed to be complimenting Hu Jinyao, but Su Qingsang curved her lips. "I don't think so. 1/3 of the female employees in Chanyu Group are heartbroken. Who's going to do the work then?" Eee. Ding Qing laughed a little exaggeratedly. "Mrs. Hua, you're so humorous." "I'm not exactly humorous. I'm just telling the truth." Su Qingsang looked calm but with a trace of certainty. "I believe that the people in Hu Jinyao's company wouldn't be so unprofessional. Don't you think so, Miss Ding?" Ding Qing wasn't stupid. Of course she understood what she meant. For a moment, the smile on her face faded a little. She was a little embarrassed. However, the embarrassment only lasted for a moment. She looked straight ahead as if she was driving seriously. However, she added something because of what she had said just now. "Of course. The success of Tianyu Group is inseparable from the hard work of all the employees in the company." Su Qingsang nodded as if she agreed with Ding Qing. "I think so too. So, I don't think that the female employees will be heartbroken because of Hu Jinyao's marriage. Or, do you think that everyone else is heartbroken because of Hu Jinyao's marriage?" "Mrs. Hua, you really like to joke." Ding Qing didn't expect that Su Qingsang would give her another soft rebuff. I'm not among the female employees who are heartbroken because of President Hua. After all, I have a boyfriend. As for why you know about the other female employees, Mrs. Hua, I can understand. As the company grows, there will always be more people who gossip. Yes, I believe you. Wherever there are people, there will be gossip. But I believe in Hua Jinyao's employees more than I do. If Hua Jinyao can't even handle such a small matter, and his employees lose their jobs because of his marriage, Hua Jinyao doesn't need to be the president anymore. Don't you think so? Ding Qing stopped talking. This was the first time she had a face-to-face confrontation with Su Qingsang. She had thought that Hua Jinyao was just a soft rabbit, but now she found out that she was a hedgehog. You're right, Mrs. Hua. President Hua is very capable and resourceful. I also believe that under his leadership, our employees will be able to follow Tianyu Group to a higher level. Miss Ding. Su Qingsang leaned against the back seat of the car. The heater in the car was very warm. She didn't take off her coat, but she still felt a little warm. President Hua isn't here, so you don't have to flatter him in front of me. Mrs. Hua, you're joking again. I don't think it's flattery. Don't you like people praising President Hua's ability? I don't like it. As Su Qingsang spoke, she smiled faintly. In my heart, Hua Jinyao is good at everything. So, I really don't need to listen to others praising him. Su Qingsang smiled. Ding Qing only glanced at the smile in her eyes and the sweetness on her face through the rearview mirror. She just felt that the smile on her face was a little dazzling. Why did Su Qingsang smile so sweetly? It was because of Hua Jinyao. Without Hua Jinyao, what would Su Qingsang be? Nothing at all. Ding Qing lowered her eyes. She knew that she had been a little too impatient today. She should have calmed down a little. However, when she thought of Hua Jinyao at Charm of Night last night, she suddenly couldn't help it. It didn't matter. There was still a long way to go. She would be with Hua Jinyao every day. She didn't believe that she wouldn't have a chance at all. She didn't say another word. She stared at the road ahead and focused on driving. Su Qingsang didn't speak either. She looked at Ding Qing's back and thought about what she would do next. On the way here, she finally understood that Ding Qing didn't seem to be very obvious, but in fact, she was trying to provoke her with every word she said. Chapter 524. If she really took it seriously, she would be tricked by this woman and fell into her trap. After understanding this, Su Qingsang's expression became much calmer. She didn't feel bored. Instead, she looked at the scenery outside the car window with great interest. In the silence, the car arrived at a high-end apartment complex. Ding Qing drove the car directly to the gate of one of the apartments. She stopped the car, pulled over, and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Mrs. Hua, let me help you carry your luggage upstairs. As she spoke, she was about to get out of the car to carry the luggage. However, when she pushed the door open, she found that Su Qingsang was sitting in the back seat and didn't move. She was shocked and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Mrs. Hua. Su Qingsang crossed her arms in front of her chest and blinked at Ding Qing, then looked at the apartment in front of her. Who told you that I live here? What? Ding Qing was surprised for a while, then apologized profusely. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hua. I'm so sorry. Last time when President Hua was drunk, I drove him home. This was the address he gave me. I thought that you two lived together. I'm sorry. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She looked at Ding Qing, who was apologizing and blaming herself. It seemed that Ding Qing was upset because she didn't do a good job. The car door was still open. Ding Qing was about to step out of the car. But now she turned to look at Su Qingsang. All of a sudden, she leaned forward a little and stared at Ding Qing's face with her sharp eyes. Ding Qing's pretty face looked surprisingly imposing at the moment. She had been with Hua Jinyao for a long time, so she had unconsciously learned some of his mannerisms. Did you say that last time you drove Hua Jinyao home, you drove him here? Ding Qing shrunk her neck as if she didn't understand why Su Qingsang's expression suddenly changed. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hua. I acted on my own. Acted on your own? Su Qingsang nodded heavily. You did act on your own. Because Hua Jinyao doesn't live here. Ding Qing blinked. Her delicate face was filled with confusion. President Hua doesn't live here? She looked hesitant as if she was really acting. Only Su Qingsang didn't believe that he didn't do it on purpose. Su Qingsang didn't answer her question. She just stared at her face, her eyes sharp and piercing. Ding Qing tried her best to stay calm. Even though Su Qingsang was staring at her, she didn't show any panic. It only took her a few seconds to calm herself down. He tilted his head and seemed a little uncomfortable as he spoke. Mrs. Hua, Why don't you tell me your address? Su Qingsang didn't answer. She took out her phone and called Hu Jinyao. Ding Qing watched her, but the look on her face didn't change. Su Qingsang was also looking at her. Seeing that this woman was so calm, she really admired her in her heart. He just hoped that he could be this calm later. The call went through, but no one answered. Su Qingsang wasn't in a hurry and let the phone keep ringing. About a minute later, the call ended. The look on Ding Qing's face didn't change. Only she knew that there was an almost imperceptible trace of relief in her eyes. The corners of Su Qingsang's mouth curled up slightly, and she pressed the call button again. It was a nice day in Rong City, and Su Qingsang's flight was early. It was almost noon now. The sunlight outside was refracted through the car window, making Su Qingsang's face look especially fair, with a faint layer of light. The call finally went through. The look on Su Qingsang's face suddenly changed. It wasn't as sharp as before, but slightly gentle. Ding Qing was also looking at her. Naturally, she didn't miss the change in Su Qingsang's eyes. She pursed her lips slightly, but she disguised it very well. "Qingsang, you're here?" It was Hu Jinyao's voice. He seemed to still be in a meeting because Su Qingsang could hear the sound of him arranging documents and someone typing on the keyboard on the other end. "Yeah. It's almost noon. Are you still busy?" Su Qingsang kept looking at Ding Qing while talking. "Yeah." Hu Jinyao nodded, glanced at Yang Wenchang and signaled him to go out first. "I'll send someone to pick you up. Did you get it? Are you home now?" They had just finished a meeting and he went to the bathroom. When he came out, his phone was ringing. "I got it. I just want to ask, do you have a house in Minghua Xindu?" "Minghua Xindu?" Su Qingsang's words confused Hu Jinyao. "Yeah, I have two. This building was developed by Tianyu Group. That's why I kept two." "What's wrong? Why are you asking me this?" "No. I just passed by here and found the environment here nice." Su Qingsang noticed that when Hu Jinyao said that he had a house here, Ding Qing's lips curved up. Although it was only for a short while, she saw it clearly. She didn't ask the main point as she thought she would. "The environment is nice, but not as good as where we live now. Another thing is that it's a bit far from where I work. If you like it, I'll have someone clean it up next time and you can live there." "You said you have two houses." "Yeah. I wanted to live in one house by myself, so I renovated it. Later, I didn't want to live there anymore, so I arranged for Wenchang to rent it out. The other one hasn't been renovated, so it's not suitable for you to live in. If you like it, I'll have someone decorate it. You can decorate it the way you want." "No need. Our house is pretty good. I don't plan to move." Su Qingsang added, "I can't live in the house my mother bought for me yet. But you can continue to renovate it and rent it out." "I don't have time for that." Hu Jinyao was very busy. He really didn't have time for such trivial things. Mohan wanted it before, but his company moved, so he kept it. Su Qingsang didn't ask further. She already knew what she wanted to know. Seeing that Ding Qing's expression didn't change, she felt that this woman was quite impressive. "Haven't you eaten yet?" "No." Wenchang ordered food. "It'll be sent up later." Hu Jinyao glanced at the time. "Have you eaten yet?" "No. I told Ms. Yu before I came. She's ready. I'll eat when I get home later." "That's good." Hu Jinyao nodded. Suddenly, he thought of something. "Aren't you home yet? That shouldn't be. Normally she should be home already." "No." Su Qingsang looked at Ding Qing and raised her eyebrows. "Miss Ding, you don't seem to know the way. You drove to the wrong place." Hu Jinyao knitted his eyebrows. "Really?" "Yeah," Su Qingsang said with a smile. Ding Qing's expression finally changed. "Maybe it's too hard to find our house." Chapter 525. Su Qingsang had been on speakerphone when she was on the phone. She was looking at Ding Qing now. She pointed the phone screen at Ding Qing and handed it to her. Ding Qing didn't expect Su Qingsang to be so unpredictable. Because of Su Qingsang's sudden action, she didn't know what to say. This was the first time that all of her intelligence had been rendered useless. "Secretary Ding?" Hu Jinyao's voice was a little cold. "Where are you now?" "Yes, I'm in Minghua Xindu." Ding Qing had been very confident in front of Hu Jinyao lately. Even though she had felt a little guilty and blamed herself for what had happened to Qiao Hong in front of him before. But it still couldn't hide her shrewdness and capability. "Minghua Xindu?" Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows slightly. "Secretary Ding, shouldn't Minghua Xindu and the imperial court be in different directions?" Before Ding Qing went to pick him up, he asked Yang Wenchang to tell Ding Qing the address. Why did Ding Qing bring him to Minghua Xin? No wonder Su Qingsang asked him about the house in Minghua Xindu. President Hua, I don't want to listen to your explanation now. I will give you 15 minutes to send my wife back to the imperial dynasty and then go back to the company. His tone was cold and impolite. The phone was on speaker mode and Su Qingsang was sitting next to him. For a moment, Ding Qing felt that her face was burning. She sat there, her body slightly trembling. She didn't expect to face such a situation. President Hua, give the phone to my wife. Hua Jinyao's voice was still cold. He didn't plan to give Ding Qing face at all. Su Qingsang calmly took the phone out of Ding Qing's hand. This time she turned on the speakerphone and put the phone back to her ear. Jinyao. Sorry. Hua Jinyao didn't need to know what was going on with Ding Qing. No matter what, he wouldn't be happy. Ding Qing will drive you home right away. Go back and rest well. All right. Su Qingsang watched Ding Qing turn around to start the car in a daze. She smiled and said, You should go have dinner too. Work is endless. Don't tire yourself out. I know. Her concern softened Hua Jinyao's expression. After all, Ding Qing was there, so Su Qingsang didn't say anything else. After hanging up, she looked at Ding Qing. Ding Qing's face was stiff, but she didn't start the car right away. Instead, she looked at her again, judging her. The way Ding Qing looked at her made Su Qingsang very uncomfortable, so she didn't want to be nice to Ding Qing. Secretary Ding, aren't you going to drive? Just now, Jinyao seemed to have asked you to send me home as fast as possible, right? Mrs. Hua, don't worry. I'll deliver it now. Ding Qing took a deep look at her, then turned around, started the car, and sped towards the imperial court. Su Qingsang sat in the back seat and didn't say a word. She still looked calm, as if the phone call and Ding Qing's provocation didn't affect her at all. Ding Qing happened to see the look on Su Qingsang's face in the rearview mirror. She clenched the steering wheel tightly. For a moment she really wanted to stop the car, turn around and slap the smile off Su Qingsang's face. It was just that she held back. Seeing that the navigation had pointed to the destination, her mind turned quickly. She didn't want to admit defeat, at least not like this. Half an hour later, the car stopped at the entrance of the imperial court apartments. Su Qingsang reached for the car door. This time she didn't need Ding Qing to open the car door for her. However, before she pushed the car door open, Ding Qing suddenly turned around and looked at her. The look on her face was much calmer than before. Mrs. Hua, do you think you've won? Ding Qing looked at Su Qingsang with determination. We're not competing. Who cares about winning or losing? Su Qingsang felt that she was really patient today. She had been talking nonsense with Ding Qing. If you say so, then so be it. However, I feel that you will lose sooner or later. Mrs. Hua, do you know why? Asked Ding Qing with a faint smile on her face. Su Qingsang didn't answer, and Ding Qing didn't need an answer. President Hua clearly asked me to drive him here that day, but he's suddenly so unhappy today. I admit I was a little impatient. But if you're not guilty, why are you so angry? To put it bluntly, he's angry because I don't know what's important. I'm also using this to cover up his guilty conscience. Speaking of this, Ding Qing suddenly smiled and said, Mrs. Hua, do you still think that you haven't lost? Su Qingsang's expression didn't change. She just looked at Ding Qing, who was smiling and provoking her. She curled up the corners of her mouth and put on a smile that was even brighter than Ding Qing's. Lost? What do you mean by lost? Hua Jinyao asked you to drive him home? That's called losing? Mrs. Hua, why do you have to lie? President Hua and I were alone. I drove him home and then we went upstairs. He got drunk again. What do you think will happen? Su Qingsang looked at her with the same smile on her face. What are you trying to imply? That Hua Jinyao got drunk and had sex with you? Or that you took the initiative to hook up with him, and then Hua Jinyao took advantage of the fact that he was drunk? Did you do it? Are you sure? Ding Qing moved her lips. She was very sure that if she dared to say that Hua Jinyao did it with her, this woman would immediately call Hua Jinyao to verify it. It's normal for a man to do something when he's drunk. Mrs. Hua, are you angry? She was hoping that Su Qingsang would be angry. It was a pity that Su Qingsang never played by the rules. She was destined to fail. Ding Qing, Secretary Ding, I think you should see a doctor. After all, it's not good for you to have delusions at such a young age. Mrs. Hua, do you think I'm lying to you? If you don't believe me, you can call President Hua. You can ask him if we spent the whole night together on Friday night. Of course they spent the whole night together. However, they spent the whole night together in the company's office. Not only that, Yang Wenchang was with them. However, Ding Qing would never tell Hua Jinyao the truth. Even if Su Qingsang asked Hua Jinyao, she would get the same answer. Secretary Ding, you really don't have to lie to me. I also believe that you spent the whole night with Hu Jinyao. But there's something you don't know, right? What is it? Su Qingsang didn't want to waste any more time with this woman. She glanced at her coldly, with sympathy and sarcasm in her eyes. Then she pushed the car door open and stepped out of the car. Every time Hu Jinyao gets drunk, he only sleeps. He doesn't do anything else. And more importantly, Su Qingsang didn't finish the second half of her sentence. She slammed the car door shut and walked to the back to get the luggage. Ding Qing didn't hear the last part of Su Qingsang's sentence. She got out of the car without hesitation. Seeing Su Qingsang take the 2 suitcases down, she reached out her hand to stop her from pulling the lever. What's the other thing? Su Qingsang gently waved her hand away and pulled the 2 suitcases in front of her. Seeing the anxious look on Ding Qing's face, she leaned forward a little and spoke in a low voice that only the 2 of them could hear. Hu Jinyao, he doesn't lift. You don't know that, do you? It was noon and there were few people in the neighborhood. Su Qingsang wasn't afraid that people would hear her even if she spoke in a low voice. However, she said it in such a way. Seeing Ding Qing's stunned face, she chuckled and said, Miss Ding, if you want to lie next time, you'd better prepare a strategy. No, that's impossible. Ding Qing didn't believe a single word that Su Qingsang said. She didn't believe a single word that Su Qingsang said. Impossible? Then why don't you think about why Hu Jinyao would marry me, considering his family background? You've investigated my identity, haven't you? No matter whether Li Qianxue acknowledged her or not, she was still an illegitimate daughter of the Li family on the surface. Her identity hadn't been made public. Ding Qing was almost petrified. She stared at Su Qingsang with her eyes wide open, unable to digest what Su Qingsang had just said. Su Qingsang looked at her, her eyes full of sympathy and sarcasm. At last, she pulled the 2 suitcases into the apartment quickly. Ding Qing stood there for a long time. She didn't come to herself until a cold wind blew over. She thought about the tall and strong Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang's words, but she couldn't connect the 2 together. How was that possible? It was impossible. She returned to the company in such a state of shock and bewilderment. As soon as she entered the company, she was called into Hu Jinyao's office. When she met Hu Jinyao's cold eyes, she still hadn't come to herself from Su Qingsang's words. She even subconsciously looked at Hu Jinyao's lower body. However, her eyes were blocked by the desk. She couldn't help but look into Hu Jinyao's eyes again. Hu Jinyao was unhappy that she was staring at him. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Ding Qing. Miss Ding, can you please explain it to me? I asked you to send my wife to the imperial court, but you sent her to Minghua Xindu instead. His voice was cold and his words were even colder. Ding Qing had already thought of an excuse for herself on her way to the hospital. I'm sorry, President Hua. When I got Mrs. Hua, she didn't say that she was going home for lunch. I asked her and she said that she hadn't had lunch yet. Then I remembered that there's a private restaurant near Minghua Xindu. The food there is quite good, so I wanted to take Mrs. Hua there. When I passed by Minghua Xindu, I remembered that Miss Chen mentioned that your apartment was for rent, so I chatted with Mrs. Hua for a while. Then I found out that she didn't seem to know that your apartment was there. I'm sorry, President Hua. I shouldn't have said so much. Ding Qing's words were beautiful. First, she said that she was sending Su Qingsang to lunch out of kindness. Then she said that Su Qingsang called him because she found out that Hu Jinyao had a house in Minghua Xindu. Chapter 526. Hu Jinyao remained silent. Ding Qing stood there with a guilty look on her face. She was betting. He was betting that Su Qingsang wouldn't ask him about it after Hu Jinyao went back. However, even if he asked, her explanation today was considered acceptable. She was confident that she had a 90% chance of passing. Hu Jinyao looked at Ding Qing. Ding Qing was a capable woman. Ever since she took over Zhang Yang's job, she had performed admirably. As she was a woman, she was even more meticulous than Zhang Yang. If possible, he didn't want to change his secretary for the time being. However, there were conditions for that. Secretary Ding. Ding Qing stood there. She wasn't sure if she could pass today's test. If she couldn't, she could only blame her bad luck. I hope you can understand one thing. President Hua, please go ahead. Ding Qing lowered her head. I can understand if you make a small mistake at work, or if you don't do your best in some aspects. But in everything that concerns my wife. These are all my bottom lines, understand? Su Qingsang wasn't an unreasonable person. She wouldn't be upset just because he didn't tell her that he had a house in Minghuaxing. That was not Su Qingsang's style. There were other reasons for Hu Jinyao's preference. The reason probably had something to do with Ding Qing. Ding Qing crossed her hands. She didn't even dare to raise her head. I'm sorry, President Hua. I'm so sorry. I promise there will be no next time. If you lie in front of me, you know what will happen, right? Ding Qing felt a great deal of pressure. Her back was covered in sweat. Mr. Hua, I didn't lie. I'm telling the truth. Secretary Ding. Hua Jinyao looked at Ding Qing and said in a cold voice, Are you sure that my wife is mad at me because I didn't tell her which properties I own? That's not what I mean. Ding Qing lowered her eyes and said, Maybe I said something inappropriate, or maybe I said something that upset Mrs. Hua. In short, it's all my fault. As long as you know. Hua Jinyao lowered his head and didn't look at Ding Qing again. Ding Qing could feel the sweat dripping down her back. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Please give me one more chance. The office was very quiet. Hua Jinyao didn't speak. He just busied himself with what he was doing. He didn't let Ding Qing leave, nor did he tell her what to do with her. Ding Qing moved her lips. She couldn't help but say something. Hua Jinyao finally finished the documents in his hands and raised his head to look at her. Sure, I'll give you a chance. Hua Jinyao looked at Ding Qing and waved his hand. If it happens again, don't blame me for being rude. After all, Ding Qing had contributed a lot to Qiao Hong's death. She had even been injured because of it. He wasn't an unreasonable boss. If possible, he didn't want to change people every day. Ding Qing turned around and left. When she walked out of Hua Jinyao's office, she sighed softly. He flew at a low altitude, but at least he passed. This time she was too impatient. Next time she would definitely not make such a mistake. However, there wouldn't be a next time. Ding Qing turned around and looked at Hua Jinyao's office with determination in her eyes. When Hua Jinyao was about to get off work, Yang Wenchang walked in. He had asked someone to check Qiao Hong's bank accounts today, but no problem was found. That wasn't normal. It seemed to be an impromptu decision. But now, Hua Jinyao had reason to suspect that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Yes, that's not normal. Hua Jinyao gently tapped the desk with a serious look on his face. He looked at Yang Wenchang and said, Are you sure that you've checked all his bank accounts? Including his family's accounts? Yes. Yang Wenchang was very sure. I've checked all of them. I've even checked Qiao Hong's grandparents who are already old. Nothing suspicious. Oh, did they suddenly move? Not really. Yang Wenchang was very capable. Of course, he wouldn't allow himself to make such a stupid mistake. Qiao Hong's parents live in an affordable neighborhood about an hour's drive from the company. Qiao Hong's parents raised the down payment and said that they would buy him a new house for him to get married. That's what happened to his girlfriend. Hua Jinyao felt that something was wrong. Suddenly, he stopped tapping the desk and thought of a problem. Keep watching Qiao Hong's bank accounts. Mr. Hua. Keep watching him. First, find out what he spent the 2 million on. Secondly, take a look and see if anyone has suddenly given Qiao Hong money in the next half a month. Yang Wenchang's eyes lit up. Mr. Hua, you mean that Qiao Hong hasn't received the money yet, so you can't find out anything? Yes. If it was a trap, the other party must have promised the other party something good. The benefit didn't have to be given immediately. It could be given later. Just look at the weight of the person who gave you the benefits and you will know. What if Qiao Hong is not suspicious in the end? Then it can only mean that he did it on an impromptu decision. However, Hua Jinyao didn't believe it. Go. You've worked hard. Go home early today. Mr. Hua, the board meeting this morning, it's okay. I can handle it. Hua Yifan was indeed a little too proud recently. But it didn't matter. Let him be proud for a while. Hua Yifan was the vice president of the company, but recently he seemed to be in the limelight. It was only because he negotiated the Ike's case. However, they all knew exactly how he negotiated the case. Hua Yifan didn't feel embarrassed to take most of the credit for it. Not only Hua Yifan, but Hua Yang, who was placed in the design department of the company, had also become more arrogant recently. He didn't want to think about what the siblings had done in the dark. They wouldn't be arrogant for long anyway. Hua Jinyao wanted to talk to Yang Wenchang about Ding Qing so that he could hire a backup, but he didn't in the end. Since he had promised to give Ding Qing a chance, he would let her stay. Zhang Yang was only taking a vacation, not quitting. Yang Wenchang looked a little worried. He watched Hua Jinyao leave without saying a word. He truly felt that Hua Jinyao had been through a lot. He had never seen a chairman like his own, who would help his nephew instead of his own son. Hua Jinyao didn't know that he had become like a cabbage, which made Yang Wenchang feel sorry for him. When he got home, the lights were already bright. Su Qing Sang was talking to Auntie Yu in the kitchen. and the sound of the two women's chatting could be faintly heard. There was a faint aroma of food in the air. The dim yellow light in the room made him feel warm again. The warm feeling he had when he was in Lin City came again. He put down the car key, gently changed his shoes, and walked to the door of the kitchen. Ms. Yu was cooking and Su Qing-sang was helping her. "Ms. Yu, just put some salt in the soup, right?" "Yes," Ms. Yu said with a smile. "I didn't expect you to be so talented. When Mr. Tang comes back and finds out that you made this soup, he will love it." "Who said I made it for him?" Su Qing-sang put the salt in the soup, tasted it, and said, "I'm tired these days. Can't I make it for myself?" "Madam, I'm afraid that Mr. Tang will have to drink a few more bowls later." Seeing that Su Qing-sang didn't mean what she said, Ms. Yu smiled brightly and scooped the dishes. She turned around and saw Hu Jinyao coming back. Su Qing-sang was about to retort when she suddenly saw Hu Jinyao's figure. She was startled and almost dropped the spoon in her hand. She glared at Hu Jinyao and took the soup outside. Hu Jinyao followed behind her and put his arms around her waist when she put down the soup. "Honey, I missed you so much." "Stop it." Su Qing-sang patted the back of his hand. "Go wash your hands and get ready for dinner." "Honey, I really missed you." "Didn't you miss me?" He leaned in close to her ear, his hot breath on her neck. Su Qing-sang felt itchy and shrank her neck. "Who wants to miss you? Go wash your hands and eat." "Yes, madam." He raised 3 fingers and then quickly headed in the direction of the bathroom. Su Qing-sang shook her head and went back to the kitchen to help bring out the dishes. Ms. Yu was a little embarrassed. "Madam, please sit down." "I'll do it." "It's okay. I have nothing to do anyway." She came back in the afternoon, packed up her things and slept for a while. When she woke up, Ms. Yu had already started cooking. When Hu Jinyao came out, 4 dishes and 1 soup were already on the table. Ms. Yu untied the apron around her waist. "Sir, madam, I'll go back first. Leave the bowls here. I'll come and clean them up tomorrow." After Ms. Yu left, Su Qing-sang scooped a bowl of soup. Unexpectedly, she didn't put it in front of Hu Jinyao like before. Instead, she put it in front of herself. She picked up the bowl and smelled the aroma. It was delicious. She couldn't tell that she was really talented in cooking. Hu Jinyao saw that her attitude was different from usual and understood what was going on. He leaned over with a faint smile on his face. "Honey, are you angry?" "I'm not angry." Su Qing-sang took a sip of the soup. Yes, it tasted good. She could try something else next time. How could she not be angry? "Then wife, give me a bowl of soup." "Don't you have hands?" Su Qing-sang glanced at him coldly. Hu Jinyao's gaze became more and more resentful, but only for a moment. He quickly put on a fawning smile. "Honey, don't be angry." "I said I'm not angry." "No. You see, I really didn't mean to not tell you. I have a house in Minghua. I have too many properties under my name. If you want to know, I'll ask Wenchang to calculate tomorrow how much real estate, movable property, and other funds, stocks, bonds, and so on I have. I'll let you have a look then." Su Qing-sang put down the bowl and didn't look at him. "No need. Why would I look at those? You're my wife now. So, aren't my properties also yours?" "Is that so?" Su Qing-sang smiled fakely. "Thank you. But no need. The money I earn is enough for me to spend." After Li Qinxue recognized her, she gave her 5% of the Li Group's shares and a monthly dividend. Li Qinxue bought a few properties in Rong City. Other than the small villa she lived in, the remaining 2 houses were now rented out. The rent was not small each year. Her monthly salary was also enough for her expenses. She wasn't a person who spent money like water and only wanted to enjoy life. "Honey, really don't be angry. I promise I'll tell you everything next time." "Okay." Hu Jinyao pulled the chair closer to her. Su Qing-sang put her hand on her forehead and looked at him. "Do you want to eat?" "Honey." Hu Jinyao met Su Qing-sang's eyes and had no choice but to compromise. "I'll eat." "Honey, you're so fierce." Su Qing-sang's mouth twitched. "Hu Jinyao, but you're also very cute when you're fierce. I like it very much." Su Qing-sang's forehead twitched. Who was going to take this guy away? Why was he always so indecent when he was outside? Why was he always so indecent in front of her? Hu Jinyao wanted to speak a few times, but Su Qing-sang didn't look at him. She just ate quietly. Auntie Yu's cooking was quite good. At least Su Qing-sang had a good appetite. After eating, Hu Jinyao thought that he could have a good chat. Unexpectedly, Su Qing-sang took the initiative to wash the dishes. "Honey, let Auntie Yu clean it up tomorrow." "No need." Su Qing-sang cleaned the table and dishes without looking at Hu Jinyao. "Honey, do you want me to help?" Su Qing-sang finally stopped what she was doing. She turned to look at him and said calmly, "Well, do you want to break a few more bowls?" Hu Jingyao was terrified. He stopped talking and watched Su Qingsang busy. Her movements were fast and neat. Not long after, she cleaned the kitchen. At the same time, he also wiped the dining table outside. Hu Jingyao followed behind her, but she pretended not to see him. After she was done, she went straight back to her room. Hu Jingyao had no choice but to follow her in again. Su Qingsang had already packed her luggage in the afternoon. She took out the gifts one by one. Some were for Old Master Hua, some for Hua Mingguang, and some for Lu Tongjia. There were also some local specialties from Lin City. Su Qingsang planned to take them to the hospital tomorrow for Sun Huiya and the others. She had to go to work tomorrow, so Su Qingsang packed the gifts one by one according to the amount she had bought before. Hu Jingyao watched her from the side. "Honey, shut up, don't disturb me." Hu Jingyao was very sad. He glanced at Su Qingsang, turned around and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Su Qingsang wasn't afraid of Hu Jingyao's anger. In fact, she was angry. Even if she believed that there was nothing between Hu Jingyao and Ding Qing, Hu Jingyao was a married man. When a woman threw herself at him, he didn't push her away and even reached out with a look of enjoyment. Su Qingsang ignored Hu Jingyao. She packed all the gifts and put them away. She only needed to carry them to the car tomorrow. She went to the closet to get her pajamas and was about to take a shower. When she was about to go in, Hu Jingyao just came out. "Honey, are you going to take a shower?" Su Qingsang gave him a look as if he was an idiot. She was going to take a shower with her pajamas. "Honey, do you want me to help you?" As Hu Jingyao spoke, he winked at Su Qingsang. He was handsome. Even with such a roguish expression, he looked quite attractive. Su Qingsang stopped breathing and tried to calm down. "Thank you. No need. Honey, you don't have to be so polite with me. I'll be happy to help you take a shower." As he spoke, he shook his head. He had just taken a shower and his body was a little damp. The ends of his hair were wet. Water dripped down and fell on his chest, which was only wrapped in a bath towel. Su Qingsang looked straight ahead and forced herself not to look at Hu Jingyao's masculinity. "Thank you, but I don't want you to help me take a shower." After saying that, Su Qingsang walked past him and went to the bathroom. However, Hu Jingyao suddenly hugged her. He turned around and easily pressed her body against the wall. He was very tall, and Su Qingsang was very petite. Being pressed by him like that, she felt as if her whole body was nailed to the wall. She didn't hold her pajamas properly and fell to the ground. Hu Jingyao put me down. It didn't feel good to have her feet hanging in the air. Su Qingsang gritted her teeth and stared at him, signaling him to put her down. Hu Jingyao didn't let her down. With his height advantage, he easily trapped Su Qingsang's body and made her look at him. His forehead was against hers, and the tips of their noses were almost touching. His eyes met hers. His black pupils were so dark that she couldn't see the bottom of them. Su Qingsang cursed in her heart. "Bastard, he only knows how to seduce me with his body. He's too much." "Honey, are you done being angry?" Hu Jingyao didn't just use his body. He lowered his voice and spoke in a soft voice. His voice was very sexy. Su Qingsang suddenly felt a little breathless. She forced herself not to look at his handsome face. "Is there something wrong with your ears?" "I said I'm not angry." "Liar." Hu Jingyao held her face with one hand and didn't let her escape. "Okay. If you say you're not angry, then don't be angry. Honey, we haven't seen each other for a few days. You don't even know how much I missed you." As he spoke, one of his hands slid down her cheek little by little, over her front and then her collarbone. Hu Jingyao. Su Qingsang didn't want to have sex with him now. She still had things to ask. "So, honey?" Hu Jingyao leaned over and gently pecked her lips. "I missed you so much when you weren't at home. You really didn't miss me at all? Did you miss me?" Su Qingsang turned her head and avoided his second kiss. "Why do I feel that you're so busy that you don't have time to miss me?" "Honey?" He was very busy, but being busy and missing her were two different things. "I'm so sad that you miss me like this." "You're sad? Why don't I feel that way?" Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows slightly as she spoke. Her clear eyes were a little mischievous. A hand gently poked his chest. It wasn't asterisk asterisk, but asterisk asterisk. It was just a gentle nod. Chapter 527. Hu Jingyao paused for a second and let go of her. Su Qingsang slid down from his arms. To prevent herself from falling, she pressed her back against the wall. As she was about to leave his arms, Hu Jingyao suddenly put his hands on both sides of her body. "Honey, how did you know?" Hu Jingyao thought of her phone call that day and Ding Qing. His face darkened. Did Ding Qing tell him about it? How did I know? It's all because you went to a nightclub. It's all over the news. What? Are you afraid that I'll find out about it? Hu Jingyao was stunned for a moment. Not everyone in Rong City dared to mess with Tianyu Group. Not everyone dared to report on his news. He rarely gave interviews to the media, and almost no photos were leaked to the public. Because of that, the Li family couldn't find out who he was when he was in Lin City. Honey? Look at you. If you want to sentence me to death, you should at least give me a chance to appeal, right? A chance to appeal, right? Okay. Su Qingsang didn't waste time talking to him. She took out her phone and clicked on the WeChat account. She swiped her finger on the screen. Soon, Hu Jingyao saw the news that day, and of course he saw himself in the video. Of course he saw Ding Qing throw herself into his arms. He thought of the tone Su Qingsang used when she called him. He suddenly thought of Ding Qing's words. He suddenly understood why Su Qingsang used that tone when she called him. So that was why. He was wondering why Su Qingsang would get angry at him because of a house. Honey, I can explain. Go ahead. I'm listening. Su Qingsang spread her hands and looked like she was all ears. Actually, it's a long story. You can make it short. As she spoke, Su Qingsang picked up her pajamas. She stepped back again and stood at the door of the bathroom. Exactly. Why did Ding Qing and I appear in that bar? It's because our company lost something. Then it fell into the hands of an employee. Because it was very important, I was in a hurry to get it back that day. She briefly explained what happened that day. Hu Jingyao didn't elaborate further. However, Su Qingsang sensed something different in his voice. You mean you've got it back now? Yeah, I got it back. Seeing that she stopped asking about Ding Qing, Hu Jingyao sighed with relief. That was really an accident. Su Qingsang saw it. No wonder she was unhappy when Ding Qing went to pick her up. You said you spent 2 million? He said it casually, but Su Qingsang took it in. Yeah. Hu Jingyao looked at Su Qingsang nervously. Honey, you're not going to complain that I spent too much money, are you? Su Qingsang rolled her eyes at him. She didn't want to talk to him when he was so out of tune. She held the pajamas in her hands and fell into deep thought. Tianyu Group was such a big company and its benefits were quite good. The employees had all signed confidentiality agreements, and the annual salary of the employees involved in this project was at least a few 100,000 yuan. Would the other party do such a thing for 2 million? Hu Jingyao, don't you think there's something wrong with this? What's wrong? Of course Hu Jingyao did, but now he was interested in Su Qingsang's deduction. Su Qingsang told him about her inference and pointed out the unreasonable parts of it. So, he only needs to work for Tianyu Group for 2 or 3 years or at most 3 or 4 years. Then he has the money. Why would he do such a thing? Hu Jingyao looked at Su Qingsang with undisguised appreciation in his eyes. It was a pity that Su Qingsang went to study medicine. She was quite sensitive about business. Besides, if it were me, I could ask for a sky-high price. If I asked you for 10 or 20 million, you would have to pay me. After all, you said that this project is worth hundreds of millions, and you have invested hundreds of millions. So, this is completely unreasonable. Su Qingsang stated her own point of view. Hu Jingyao looked at her and couldn't help but be tempted. He leaned over and kissed her hard on the lips. Honey, you're so smart. Su Qingsang looked into his eyes and didn't answer him. She raised her hand and gently pinched his arm. Then she found that Hu Jingyao's arm was strong and full of muscles. She retracted her hand and poked his chest instead. Hu Jingyao, don't think that I'll forgive you for lying to me just because you praised me. Honey, how did I lie to you? Hu Jingyao felt a little wronged. Was everything I said the truth? Everything you said was the truth? Of course. Then tell me that you had a reason to go to the nightclub. I believe you, so why did you lie to me and say that you were at the old house? Hu Jingyao blinked. Su Qingsang's face was full of smiles. She nodded at him gently, signaling him to remember quickly. Her smile was meaningful, and Hu Jingyao suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Honey, forgot? Do you want me to remind you? Go ahead. I called you that day and asked you where you stayed yesterday. What did you tell me? You told me that you lived in the old house. Su Qingsang paused and poked Hu Jingyao's chest with her finger. Hu Jingyao, it's fun to lie to me, isn't it? Honey, you've really wronged me. I was reading an email at that time and I just answered casually. I really didn't lie to you. A casual answer is a lie as if it's true. Then, if one day you deliberately want to lie to me, I won't know at all, right? Honey, how could that be? I'm an outstanding young man with 5 stresses, 4 beauties and 3 loves. I've never lied to anyone. You've never lied to others? Su Qingsang poked his chest with her hand again. Why do I remember that you started to lie to me when we just got married? Hua Jingyao was speechless. He looked at Su Qingsang with his dark eyes full of helplessness. Honey, let's talk about something, okay? Go ahead. Can we not bring up the past? Okay. Su Qingsang nodded. Come, let's talk about the current situation. You went to the nightclub with Secretary Ding, but you lied to me that you went back to the old house. Are you lying to me? Also, forget about you going to the nightclub with Secretary Ding. Why did you carry her? I didn't carry her. Hua Jinyao didn't want to take the blame. At that time, another group of people was fighting, and she happened to step on a wine bottle that they threw at her. She lost her balance and fell in my direction. All I did was help her. Hua Jinyao said the last few words in a lower and lower voice. By the last word, his voice was almost silent. Su Qingsang nodded and looked understanding. I understand. You helped her to prevent her from falling. Yes. And also to hug a beauty, right? Su Qingsang tightened the pajamas in her arms as she spoke. She looked up at Hua Jinyao and said, Secretary Ding's figure is good, right? Not as good as you, Hua Jinyao answered quickly. Su Qingsang nodded and looked understanding. Not as good as me? That means you seriously looked at her figure, right? You hugged her very clearly, right? Otherwise, how would you know that she's not as good as me? Honey. Hua Jinyao was defeated by Su Qingsang. I don't remember her figure at all. Anyway, in my heart, my wife is number one in every aspect. She's the best in the world. Her figure is naturally the same. Seeing Su Qingsang's disapproving face, he hugged her. Honey, are you jealous? Who wants to be jealous of you? Su Qingsang didn't look at Hua Jinyao. She wouldn't admit it. You still say no? Look. Hua Jinyao touched her lips with his hand. Your mouth can hang an oil bottle on it. You still say you're not jealous. Su Qingsang bit his hand a little hard and a little hard. Hua Jinyao was in pain and pulled his hand back. He looked at Su Qingsang with a wronged expression. Honey, yes. I'm jealous. What? Can't I be jealous? Honey, you're my husband. Su Qingsang poked his chest hard again and said, You belong to me from head to toe, from inside to outside. What? Other women can't touch you at all. Isn't that right? Yes. Her poke couldn't hurt him at all, but Hua Jinyao liked it very much when she was jealous. So now you're being touched by other women and being hugged by other women. Tell me, can't I be jealous? Yes. You're too capable. Hua Jinyao wrapped his arms around her waist and begged for mercy. Honey, don't worry. Next time, even if other women fall to their deaths in front of me, I promise I won't even lift a finger. I'll let them fall to their deaths. All right. You make it sound like I'm cold-blooded. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. I'm not stopping you from saving people. But next time, stay away from those women. Yes. Hua Jinyao took the opportunity to kiss her on the lips again. My wife is gentle, kind, and cute. I'm so lucky to be able to marry you. Hua Jinyao, let go of me. I'm going to take a shower. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. Hua Jinyao felt that it wasn't enough. Honey, we've been apart for so many years. Do you miss me? Seeing that she didn't answer, he wasn't in a hurry. He picked her up and walked towards the bed. Honey, don't spend your time being jealous and talking about my past. Let's do something that will make each other happy. Isn't that good? Su Qingsang was defeated by him. He could even talk about such things in such a fresh and refined way. She had to give it to him. I didn't take a shower. It's okay. I'll take a shower later. As Hua Jinyao spoke, he had already kissed her on the lips. Soon, the towel around his waist fell under the bed. The clothes that Su Qingsang was wearing had fallen under the bed at some point. When Su Qingsang was in a daze, she felt Hua Jinyao leave her body. He got up from the bedside table to get the condom. She was momentarily dazed. Hua Jinyao, honey, don't worry. It'll be quick. No, that wasn't what she wanted to ask. Jinyao, I think it might be okay. Her voice was very low, like the sound of a mosquito. This time, when she went to Lin City, she got along very well with Li Qianxue. After untangling the knot in her heart, she suddenly felt that being a mother didn't seem to be something that she resisted so much. If she could have a child, thinking about it, it didn't seem so repulsive. This child wouldn't be an illegitimate child. This child was her and Hua Jinyao's child. Was their baby. She also believed that both the elders of the Hua family and the Li family would take care of this child in the palm of their hands. When she came back, she had already begun to think about it. If she stopped using contraceptives and really got pregnant and gave birth, it seemed possible. At least for now, she was willing to try and learn how to be a mother. Hu Jinyao paused for a moment. He lowered his head and looked at Su Qingsang, whose face was flushed and her breathing was rapid. He suddenly stopped and kissed her lips again. Honey, there's no hurry. We're not in a hurry. Separated by a thin 0.01, everything felt the same as usual. However, in the extreme happiness, Su Qingsang had a vague feeling. Why did she suddenly feel that Hu Jinyao seemed to be the person who didn't want children? Su Qingsang carried 2 big bags of local specialties into the door of the department. It was Tuesday, so there were fewer patients than on Monday. Su Qingsang took advantage of the break to distribute the gifts to everyone. It's not valuable. It's a local specialty of Lin City. Please don't mind it. She said it politely, but the people in the department weren't stupid. All of them were very grateful, and they all took the gifts and thanked her. Su Qingsang put on a white coat after she finished distributing the gifts. When she was about to go to the clinic, Li Meilin blocked her way. Dr. Su, there's something I'd like to tell you. What? Li Hong's family has been making a scene in the hospital these days. They want you to give them an explanation. They want me to give them an explanation? Su Qingsang blinked. She didn't understand what Li Meilin said. Why do they want an explanation? Li Hong gave birth to a daughter, and then her uterus was removed. She can't have children anymore. Her husband blamed all of this on you. He said that if you didn't remove his wife's uterus, Li Hong wouldn't be infertile. She didn't finish her sentence, but Su Qingsang understood. What did Director Sun say? She comforted Li Hong's husband. But he didn't listen to her. I don't know who told him that. He heard that you were the first doctor to see him, and that you treated Li Hong before. That's why he wanted to get even with you. Su Qingsang nodded to show that she understood. Alright, I got it. Thank you. It's not that. The whole family came in a menacing manner. You should pay attention to them. Su Qingsang had been working in the department for a few months, and the people in the department all liked her. Li Meilin felt that she had the obligation to remind Su Qingsang since she had just received a gift from them. Where are they now? They made a scene on Friday. You weren't there, so Director Sun persuaded them to stop. They knew that most doctors don't work on weekends, so they went home. But yesterday, when Li Hong's husband came to see Li Hong, he walked around the department again. I think he came to see you. Thank you. I got it. Su Qingsang nodded but didn't take it to heart. People had come to the hospital to make trouble before. When she was in Lin City, Zhang Mei and Lu Xiangyu's families were also unreasonable. Everything was fine in the end. The hospital was a place for treatment. The treatment plan was fine and the family members had agreed to it. When they signed the contract, they had explained clearly that they had to ensure the patient's safety. In Li Hong's condition, even if they didn't remove her uterus, she wouldn't be able to survive. The impact caused by the car accident was not an ordinary impact. If they didn't remove the uterus, they would be in danger. After thinking about that, Su Qingsang went to tend to her own work. The hospital was very busy and there were many things to do every day. Besides, she was with Sun Huiya. Sun Huiya wasn't in the hospital every day. She was still a professor at Rong City Medical University. Sun Huiya had several research projects in her hands. Su Qingsang was particularly interested in one of them. She had agreed to do research with Sun Huiya. She had to focus on the patients, so she didn't take it to heart that Li Hong's husband came to make trouble. Not only did she not take it to heart, but she even went to Li Hong's ward to see her after lunch. That day she was in a hurry to go home to pack, so she didn't stay to wait for Li Hong to wake up. She believed that Sun Huiya had already told Li Hong about the situation. Li Meilin said the same thing when she asked her. She said that Sun Huiya had explained it to Li Hong and that Li Hong had accepted it. However, her husband didn't accept it. After resting for a few days, Li Hong's body had recovered a little. There was no one in the ward. Su Qingsang looked around. She closed her eyes and rested by herself. Her daughter was on the small bed next to her. Due to the shortage of hospital beds and the high number of pregnant women, Li Hong didn't stay in a single room, but a room for 2. The other patient had just left the hospital that morning, so Li Hong was the only one left in the ward. Li Hong, I'm here to see you. Although she had rested for a few days, Li Hong's face was still very pale. Hearing Su Qingsang's voice, she turned around and was surprised to see Su Qingsang. I was your surgeon that day. You didn't wake up, so I left after work. Then I took a vacation. That's why I came to see you today. Director Sun had already checked Li Hong's room that morning, but Director Sun had told her not to come. She didn't know what Director Sun meant until now. He didn't want her to have any conflict with the patient's family. Are you that Dr. Su? After Li Hong was born, she stayed in the hospital alone for a long time. She had heard that she had a daughter. At first she was quite disappointed. After all, her husband's family was waiting for her to have a son. However, since she could have a second child now, she asked someone to bring the baby to her. She was told that the baby was in an incubator and asked her to rest well before going to see the baby. She didn't mind and accepted it easily. However, her body was too weak, so she quickly fell asleep again. Before she fell asleep, she kept asking the nurse to call her husband over. In the end, when she was in a daze, her husband woke her up. Tell me, are you a pig? Are you a pig? I told you to touch the porcelain. Why did you do it? What did I do? It was her husband's idea to touch the porcelain. He said that cars weren't fast nowadays and she was pregnant. At that time, if she were to lie down on the ground, wouldn't people obediently pay when they saw the pregnant woman? Because Li Hong was pregnant, many drivers knew that she didn't hit the porcelain, but they were afraid that something might happen to her, so they paid her. Especially those who drove luxury cars, time was precious. She was even more reckless. Those people were rich and they didn't want to spend time collecting evidence or coming to the hospital. Li Hong had been safe for a long time. The only time she failed was when Zhang Yichen tried to touch her. She wanted to blackmail him, but he ran away. She failed. This was the second time. She had acted alone both times. It wasn't like this had never happened before. But this time something really happened. She didn't know what to do until she was knocked into the air. She looked at Su Qingsang with gratitude in her eyes. Dr. Su, thank you. Thank you for saving my life. I heard it from Director Sunday. She said that you saved me. You're welcome. I wasn't the one who saved you. Director Sun and the other colleagues in my department helped you. Dr. Su, you're welcome. Li Hong had been through life and death in the past few days. She got into an argument with her husband. Her mentality was different from a month ago. Thank you, really? If Su Qingsang hadn't made the decision in time, she would have been dead. She knew that. You're welcome. Take care of yourself. Su Qingsang glanced at the baby beside her. How come it's out of the incubator so early? Did you ask Director Sun? Did she agree? Yes, she agreed. Li Hong looked at her daughter with love in her eyes. She's very obedient. She eats and sleeps and eats. The baby was so small, and her cries sounded like a cat's meowing. All kids are like that at this age. Su Qingsang moved closer to Li Hong's daughter. It had only been a few days, but the little girl's face looked much prettier than when she was born. Su Qingsang was a little tempted. Li Hong and her husband weren't very good looking, but their daughter was so adorable. If it was her and Hua Jinyao's child, she wasn't being narcissistic. Hua Jinyao's child would be very beautiful, wouldn't it? It would be. Maybe she could talk to Hua Jinyao and have a child together? Take good care of your daughter. I'm going back to my office. Okay, thank you, Dr. Su. Li Hong nodded. She thought of something and looked a little embarrassed. Dr. Su. Yes. If my man says something mean to you, just pretend you didn't hear it. Don't mind him. It's okay. I understand. She had encountered this kind of situation before when she was in Lin City. There was no shortage of patriarchal families and husbands in China. Li Hong felt a little embarrassed. Su Qingsang patted her arm. All right, go rest. I'm going to come and see you. I'm leaving. Su Qingsang turned around to leave, but she wasn't very lucky. She bumped into Li Hong's husband at the door. He was on his way to deliver food to Li Hong. He was stunned for a moment when he saw Su Qingsang in a white coat, but he quickly remembered who the woman in front of him was. Chapter 528. Su Qingsang's photo was hung on the wall outside the obstetrics and gynecology department. Li Hong's husband had talked to an obstetrics doctor. Sun Huiya had tried to persuade him for a long time, but it was only superficial. Even when Sun Huiya told him that she was the one who performed the surgery, he didn't believe her. He knew that Sun Huiya was a chief physician. If she was a chief physician, she must have some connections. Su Qingsang was different. He had talked to a new doctor. He couldn't do anything to a chief physician, but a junior doctor? Yes. Tiu. Li Hong's husband put down the thermos and stepped in front of Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was surprised. She looked at Li Hong's husband and frowned. What's up? What's up? Of course. As Li Hong's husband spoke, he rolled up his sleeves and clenched his fists. Su Qingsang frowned and watched him without saying a word. Li Hong, who was lying on the bed, called out, "Lin Gang, what are you doing?" "What am I doing?" Li Hong's husband, Lin Gang, looked at Su Qingsang and pointed at her nose with his index finger. "I'm asking you, did you cut out my wife's uterus?" Su Qingsang looked at Lin Gang and nodded. "Yes, I did." "Good. You admitted it." Lin Gang nodded. "Let me ask you again. Who gave you the right to do that? Who allowed you to cut out my wife's uterus?" "Mr. Lin, I need to explain to you that your wife was in a very dangerous situation. If we didn't cut out her uterus, her life might be in danger. Do you understand?" "You mean it's possible?" "Yes. So it's not 100%? Lin Gang pointed at her. "If it's not 100%, then who gave you the right to do that? Tell me." Because his hand almost touched the tip of her nose, Su Qingsang took a step back and said, "Mr. Lin, calm down. I said it's possible because we doctors don't always say everything. But your wife's condition." "Enough. I don't want to hear it." Lin Gang took another step forward. "I'm telling you. You cut out my wife's uterus. You have to take responsibility." "Responsible?" Su Qingsang looked at him. "How do you want to be responsible?" "How can I take responsibility?" "It was simple. You must compensate me with a son." Lin Gang had found the so-called Heavenly Master, who said that Li Hong would definitely have a son. This debt had to be settled one by one. Now that the Taoist Master was done, it was Su Qingsang's turn. Su Qingsang looked at the man in front of her, whose hand was almost about to poke her again, and tried to take another step back. "Mr. Lin, please don't be unreasonable, okay? Making trouble out of nothing? I'll show you how unreasonable I am today." After saying that, Lin Gang raised his fist and punched at Su Qingsang's face. Su Qingsang didn't expect that he would hit her. Of course she wouldn't stand there and let him hit her. She took a few steps back and dodged his fist. Meng Jian didn't expect Su Qingsang to dodge his attack. He became angrier and angrier. "You damned quack. You ruined my wife and my family. I'll beat you to death." As he spoke, he rushed at Su Qingsang. Li Hong saw him and yelled, "Lin Gang, what are you doing? Stop right now." "Shut up. Bitch, it's none of your business." Lin Gang had been suppressing his anger for days. Today he had to vent it out. Su Qingsang watched him run to her and walk to the other side of the bed. But that side was even worse. She stared at Lin Gang and said coldly, "Mr. Lin, if you do this again, I'll call the police." "Call the police? Go ahead. Even if I have to go to jail, I'll beat you to death, you quack. You ruined my son." Lin Gang's fist was already coming at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang instinctively raised her hand to block it. However, the punch didn't come. Li Hong jumped off the bed. She didn't even put on her shoes. She held Lin Gang's waist tightly and wouldn't let go. "Lin Gang, stop it. Bitch, let go of me." Lin Gang reached for Li Hong's hand as he spoke. Li Hong suddenly lost her temper. "Let go of me? Let go of me?" She pushed Lin Gang hard and stared at him fiercely. "If you want to hit me, you can go to the police station. That's your business. Don't drag me into this. I'm still in my confinement. What are you doing? What are you doing? Bitch, you, what? What?" Li Hong had seen her husband's attitude these days. She asked him to take care of her, but he wouldn't do it. Look, it's already past mealtime and he's only bringing her food. Other people's women gave birth to children and served them well, but what about him? Lin Gang, you have to have a conscience. If you didn't come up with that stupid idea, would I have been hit by a car? Would I have been born prematurely? Would I have had to have my uterus removed? So you agreed, didn't you? I agreed. I agreed, but I regret it. But I regret it. Ever since Li Hong found out that she had a daughter, she had been holding it in. Lin Gang scolded her for being useless. Her parents-in-law didn't even look at her when they found out that she had a daughter. Lin Gang scolded her all day long. He said that she had given birth to a waste of money and that she was stupid. She had had enough. I regret it. I wanted to quit a long time ago. You were the one who said that I could make money fast. I need to save money to raise my son. Didn't you say that? I wanted to quit a long time ago. Li Hong suddenly burst into tears. She squatted on the ground helplessly. I regret it. I really regret it. I shouldn't have listened to you. Why did I listen to you? I shouldn't have listened to you. She didn't care about herself, but the poor baby was. The baby was supposed to stay in the incubator, but Lin Gang insisted that it was a waste of money to keep the baby in the incubator. He brought his daughter here. You bitch, what are you yelling about? Get out of my way. I'm going to kill this quack doctor today. Lin Gang looked guilty, but he didn't want to admit defeat. He pointed at Li Hong. Get out of my way. Do you hear me? Go ahead, go ahead. Kill me too. Li Hong suddenly sat up. Come on, come on. Just beat me to death. Hit me. I don't want to live anyway. What a miserable life I've been living. Why don't I want to die? What? Li Hong kicked him as she spoke. Tell me, would you be happier if I had killed both of us? Tell me. Lin Gang dodged her kick and raised his hand. Bitch, I'm warning you. Don't think that I won't dare to hurt you. I'm telling you I. Before he could finish his sentence, Li Hong suddenly fell to the ground. Bitch, don't play dead. Do you think I'll let it go? Su Qingsang stepped forward, looked at the mess in front of her, and glared at Lin Gang. Enough. Don't you see that her wound is open again? Get out of my way if you don't want her to die. She was really angry. Seeing this farce up to this point, what else could she not understand? This bitch is just playing dead. Lin Gang wanted to say something, but his voice became weaker. Su Qingsang couldn't care less about him now. She looked at Lin Gang, who was standing still like a piece of wood. She called a nurse and a caretaker to help, then asked them to carry Li Hong to the clinic for a checkup. The wound was open again. But why did she faint? She guessed that it was because she was too angry and didn't have enough blood. Su Qingsang took care of the wound immediately and stitched it up. After a while she was soaked in sweat. When she was finally done, she asked someone to take Li Hong back to the ward. Su Qingsang wiped the sweat on her forehead. She didn't expect things to turn out like this. She still remembered that Li Hong fiercely grabbed Zhang Yichen's hand and demanded that he take responsibility. What happened today changed Su Qingsang's impression of Li Hong. Back in her office, she was still worried, so she asked Li Meilin to keep an eye on Li Hong. She had thought that the matter would be over after it had come to this. After all, Li Hong was in such a state. If Lin Gang still had a conscience, he wouldn't come to make trouble again. However, Su Qingsang underestimated how shameless people could be. She thought that the matter was over, but she didn't know that her name was on the local Weibo hot search list that night. 2 photos of her were posted on Weibo. One of them was her holding Li Hong, trying to lift the unconscious Li Hong up. But because of the angle, it didn't look like she was trying to lift Li Hong up. If someone who didn't know what was going on saw the photos, he or she might think that the worry and anxiety on her face were because of guilt. That was what was written on the Weibo post. Doctor insulted patient, worsening patient's condition. None of the following articles was true. The main idea was that Su Qingsang had chased the patient into the ward and insulted the patient, which made the patient so agitated that her stitches continued to split open. The reason why Su Qingsang insulted the patient was because the patient was suspected of faking an accident. Then the article asked, can a doctor discriminate against a patient? Could a doctor insult a patient because of who she was? There was no video. Just because of a few photos which seemed to be right but were not, Su Qingsang was cursed by the keyboard users. The doctor-patient relationship was tense. Then a video like this was posted. Then another Weibo post revealed some shocking news. What was the point of saying that Su Qingsang insulted the patient? She even removed the patient's uterus because of a personal grudge. The content was quite shocking. The main idea was that Su Qingsang knew the patient was faking an accident. Therefore, after the patient was hit by a car, Su Qingsang removed the patient's uterus on purpose, even though the patient's uterus was still intact. That was why the patient lost her right to be a mother. The 2 Weibo posts caused a huge uproar. Not only the keyboard users on Weibo but also the haters were cursing. Lin Gang also went to the hospital and told them that Su Qingsang had a conflict with the patient in the ward, which made the patient so agitated that her body split open. Su Qingsang had a minor operation scheduled in the afternoon. When she finished the operation and walked out of the operating room, the incident had already become a big deal. Because Su Qingsang was in the middle of the operation, the hospital didn't call her for a talk. When she finished the operation, the leaders of the hospital office already knew about it. At the same time, they called Sun Huiya, Su Qingsang, and a few other doctors who had participated in Li Hong's rescue last time to the office of the hospital office. Su Qingsang was the last one to arrive. When she arrived, the office was already occupied by many people. Deputy Director Zhou Xiaonan, Director Qin, and Director Huang. Sun Huiya, Shen Lingyun, Yang Lu, Li Meilin, and He Shuili were also there. Su Qingsang had just taken off her surgical gown. Looking at the crowd in front of her, she still didn't understand what had happened. She didn't check Weibo or the news. She had no idea what had happened. However, as soon as she came out, she was called here. She looked at the leaders, then at Sun Huiya and greeted all of them. When she was about to find a seat, someone called her. Zhou Xiaonan looked at Su Qingsang. He knew a little about Su Qingsang. She hadn't been here for a long time, but she had a good reputation. She also had a good reputation in the gynecology and obstetrics department. This incident was an accident. They could understand that Su Qingsang, as a new doctor, might have some emotional impulses. However, they were willing to give Su Qingsang a chance. Dr. Su, regarding this incident, we hope that you can give us an explanation first. The first hospital of the city didn't rush to make a decision about firing Su Qingsang or punishing her. The first hospital of the city was not in a hurry to make a decision to fire Su Qingsang or punish her. Instead, they wanted to give her a chance to explain. What is it? Su Qingsang really didn't understand. She couldn't help but look at Sun Huiya. Sun Huiya also knew that Su Qingsang was unlucky this time. The hysterectomy had nothing to do with her. However, she also wanted to hear what Su Qingsang had to say about the conflict in the ward and the incident that was filmed and posted on the internet. Li Meilin kindly took out her phone, scrolled through the 2 Weibo posts, and handed them to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang only took a glance and was stunned. What kind of news was this? She patiently read through the content of the Weibo post and read a few of the comments below. Finally, she returned the phone to Li Meilin and thanked her. When she turned around and met Zhou Xiaonan's gaze, she stood up and said, "Director Zhou, I can explain this matter." Su Qingsang glanced at Sun Huiya and told him about the situation when Li Hong was sent to the hospital. At that time, the pregnant woman's uterus was ruptured and she was bleeding profusely. The amount of bleeding kept increasing. We had no choice but to take such measures. Director Sun can also testify for me on this matter. Okay. Zhou Xiaonan nodded and said, "I heard about this from Director Sunday. I believe that you did it to save the pregnant woman's life. So what happened this afternoon?" Li Hong is my patient. As the chief surgeon, I was concerned about her postoperative condition, but I didn't expect that I would run into her husband, Lin Gang. Su Qingsang told him what had happened, including that Lin Gang wanted to hit her and she moved to the other side of the bed to avoid him. When Lin Gang was about to hit her, Li Hong rushed over and had a conflict with Lin Gang. She was so angry that she ended up in this situation. That's how it turned out. Director Zhou, please believe me. As a professional doctor, I would never insult a pregnant woman. No matter who the pregnant woman is, whether she is a scammer or a criminal, a doctor's duty is to save lives. It has nothing to do with the patient's profession. This is something we've sworn to do when we were studying medicine. Director Zhou glanced at the other 2 leaders of the hospital and exchanged a look with them. Of course, they were willing to believe the doctors in their hospital and Su Qingsang. However, since things had come to this, the hospital had to show their attitude. Okay, don't be nervous. We asked you to come here to find out what happened. If what you said is true, our hospital will take appropriate measures against the content of the Weibo, including the pregnant woman's family. Thank you, Director Zhou. Su Qingsang nodded. She realized that she was really unlucky. But she didn't panic. With Li Hong's words and her experience in Lin City, she believed that this matter would be solved successfully. Since the people in the hospital wanted to prove Su Qingsang's innocence and the first hospital's innocence, they had to solve this matter as soon as possible. Nowadays, any news related to the doctor-patient relationship would attract a lot of attention, especially since this matter had attracted some reporters to come and interview them. Fortunately, Director Zhou responded in time. He told the reporters that they would accept the interview after finding out the truth. That stopped the reporters from rushing to the hospital. Since that's what the pregnant woman said, let's go find her and ask her about it. Then we'll report it to the media and let them know the quality of our doctors. Su Qingsang nodded. She also wanted to prove her innocence as soon as possible. Although she knew it would happen sooner or later, she still felt that she was unlucky to be the scapegoat all the time. They left the hospital. Zhou Xiaonan thought for a while and decided to go to the hospital himself. Sun Huiya was also concerned about this matter. Zhou Xiaonan, Director Qin, Director Huang, and Su Qingsang went to find Li Hong. It was past the working hours, but there were still many nurses and doctors on duty in the hospital. Seeing such a majestic group of people, they were all a little surprised. Especially Deputy Director Zhou. Although he was the deputy director, he was in charge of some of the hospital's daily affairs. Some people followed behind Zhou Xiaonan wanting to know what was going on. Suddenly there were more and more people. Doctors followed them, and so did some family members who came to see the patient after work. Zhou Xiaonan wanted to drive them away. But he thought that it was better to explain it in front of so many people. Su Qingsang walked in the front. She didn't feel anxious or uneasy. She had just stitched up Li Hong's wound. She should have woken up after an afternoon. She just needed to ask and explain and it would be over. Su Qingsang thought about how Li Hong protected her behind her and thought that it wouldn't be hard to solve. She just needed to explain it. When they arrived at Li Hong's ward, Li Hong had just woken up. The wound that hadn't fully healed was stitched up again. Her face was paler than it was at noon and she looked weak. As soon as Su Qingsang walked in, Lin Gang walked over. "You quack, what are you doing here?" "Sir, please calm down." Executive Zhou was the youngest and the oldest. He walked in the front and looked at Lin Gang, who was about to rush over and beat Li Hong. "We're here to ask you something." "What do you want to know?" Lin Gang stared at Su Qingsang, his face full of resentment. "My wife is in this state because of her. What else do you want to know?" Zhou Xiaonan already knew how unreasonable Lin Gang could be. If he was reasonable, he wouldn't have asked his pregnant wife to blackmail him. He didn't look at Lin Gang but at Li Hong. "Ms. Li, nice to meet you. Our Dr. Su came here to see you at noon and treated your wound. How are you now?" Executive Zhou's question was skillful. First, he made it clear that Su Qingsang only came to see Li Hong and did a good deed. As long as Li Hong followed his words, she wouldn't make a mistake. Su Qingsang looked at Li Hong, waiting for her to speak. Li Hong was lying on the bed. Her face was pale and she looked extremely weak. When she met Su Qingsang's gaze, she swallowed with some difficulty, and then tears flowed down her cheeks. "Dr. Su, why did you do this to me? I only blackmailed you. I had a car accident and I've been punished. Why didn't you let me go? Why did you come to my ward and scold me?" Li Hong's sudden accusation stunned Su Qingsang. She stared at Li Hong blankly, unable to believe what she had just heard. "Li Hong, do you know what you're talking about?" "Dr. Su, I beg you. Please let me go." She was completely different from the Li Hong who had stood in front of her and said righteously at noon. The Li Hong in front of Su Qingsang seemed to be a completely different person. "Li Hong, don't slander me. You know it's not like that. Dr. Su, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I know I was wrong. I've been punished. I don't even have a uterus now. I'm not a complete woman anymore. Why didn't you let me go?" Li Hong's face was pale. Lying on the bed, she was crying and blaming Su Qingsang. Even Sun Huiya, who believed in Su Qingsang's innocence, couldn't help but feel that Su Qingsang was in a miserable state. Not to mention the other colleagues who had come with her. Yes, a lot of people had gathered outside the ward. Except for the doctors, nurses, and the patients' family members who had come to see what had happened. Some pregnant women and their family members in the ward next door also came to see what was going on. Everyone was gathered there, staring at the inside. They all clearly heard what Li Hong had said. Her wound had just opened and was stitched up again. She didn't care about that. She asked Lin Gang to help her sit up and pointed at Su Qingsang. "Look, this doctor treated me like this just because I faked a car accident to get admitted to the hospital. Look at her. That's what doctors are like nowadays." Li Hong's voice was weak, but it didn't stop her from complaining. Some of the patient's family members took pictures of the scene. Su Qingsang didn't notice that there were so many people behind her. She just stared at Li Hong. Chapter 529. Director Qin and Director Huang quickly stepped forward and blocked the cell phone cameras at the door. "Stop it. Stop it." Director Qin was a little anxious. He stepped forward to block the cameras. However, it was useless. The doctors and nurses realized what was going on as well. They tried to stop the patients and their families from taking pictures. The more they tried to stop them, the more excited they were. More and more patients' families came to the door. Su Qingsang stood there, and it took her a minute to come back to her senses. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. She didn't want to get angry or talk easily. Her sharp eyes fell on Li Hong's crying face. "Li Hong, please feel your conscience." Su Qingsang couldn't help but be angry. She didn't expect that Li Hong would be waiting for her. "Did I come to scold you? Who stitched up your wound when it split open? Who did it?" Her voice wasn't loud, but her eyes were especially sharp. Li Hong, on the other hand, shrunk her neck as if she was scared. "I'm telling the truth. It's useless to threaten me. You came here to scold me. Tell me, what did I scold you about?" Su Qingsang couldn't help but take a step forward. "Can you make it clear? You know what's going on. Do you think lying will help you?" I didn't lie. It's you. It's you." Li Hong's voice was hoarse. Her face was covered in tears, making her look like a weak person. "Dr. Su, I really know I was wrong. Please don't scold me. I've paid the price. I won't do it again." Really? Li Hong. Su Qingsang raised her voice. She stared at Li Hong with anger in her eyes. Look, the doctor is threatening people. Lin Gang jumped up. He was still holding Li Hong with both hands. He pointed at Su Qingsang angrily. Look at this person. Look. She's a doctor. A doctor. How can she threaten a patient like this? Have you seen it? Su Qingsang clenched her fists. She stood there, not in a hurry to move. She pursed her lips and tried to calm down. She remembered a post she had seen on Weibo. It said that it was getting harder and harder to be a doctor in China. Not only was the doctor-patient relationship tense, but doctors often had to bear some grievances that did not belong to them. But this was not grievance, this was injustice. The whispers outside were getting louder and louder. Su Qingsang couldn't calm down. If this continued, what kind of rumors would those bystanders who didn't know the situation spread? Li Hong. Su Qingsang took a step forward and said, "Can you stop talking nonsense? Do you know, Dr. Su?" Zhou Xiaonan glanced at Su Qingsang. The hospital didn't expect things to turn out this way. None of them had expected things to turn out like this. In such a short time, Zhou Xiaonan called the hospital's security guards and a few nurses from the obstetrics and gynecology department to persuade the crowd to disperse. It was already night time. Some people saw that the matter couldn't be resolved, so they left first. There were also a few stubborn ones who stood far away to watch the show. In the end, only Chief Qin, Chief Huang and Zhou Xiaonan were left. They followed Sun Huiya back to the ward. They all looked at Li Hong and Lin Gang with serious faces. "Ms. Li Hong, there's no one else here. We just want to know what happened. You can calm down and tell us what happened." "I've made myself clear." Li Hong's voice was weak, but it didn't affect her accusation. "You don't need to say it again." Zhou Xiaonan frowned. He felt helpless about Li Hong's behavior. "But I don't think you're telling the truth." "The truth? The truth is that she scolded me. My husband tried to protect me and had a conflict with her. I didn't want to offend the doctor. When I tried to stop her, the wound opened." Li Hong insisted that Su Qingsang had scolded her and wouldn't change her words. "Ms. Li," Chief Qin said, but was interrupted. "Don't ask. You should go and deal with this doctor. She has no medical ethics, but she still works as a doctor." "Ms. Li," Chief Huang couldn't bear it anymore. It was obvious that this matter was fake. Li Hong was just a blackmailer. Even if she was a murderer, she would be treated in the hospital. Patients' privacy and gossip had nothing to do with doctors. Doctors were only responsible for saving lives. "You said that your wound opened because of Dr. Su. Do you have any proof?" "Isn't my wound the proof?" Li Hong stared at the people in front of her. "If she hadn't scolded me, if I hadn't tried to stop her from having a conflict with my husband, my wound wouldn't have opened." "Li Hong, you know that your husband wanted to hit me and you tried to stop him." Su Qingsang couldn't help but defend herself. Li Hong looked at her, confused. "Why did my husband hit you?" "Because of the previous operation you thought I removed your uterus. Your husband's family wanted you to have a son." "Who said that?" Lin Gang stared at Su Qingsang and said sarcastically, "Don't you know how much I love my daughter? Look, I didn't even let the nurses take care of her. I brought her to my side to take care of her." Su Qingsang wanted to say something, but Sun Huiya pressed on her arm to stop her. Seeing Sun Huiya's action, Lin Gang felt that he had the upper hand. He looked more and more smug. "I'm telling you, I'm going to the sanitary bureau to complain about you." Lin Gang finally found his courage. He pointed at Su Qingsang and said, "Especially you. If I don't make you lose your license, I'm not a doctor. My surname is not Lin." "Mr. Lin, please be careful. This is a hospital, not a place for you to make a scene." Sun Huiya frowned. Lin Gang's shameless family gave her a headache. "Am I making a scene? I'm just stating a fact." Lin Gang was more confident now. He stared at Su Qingsang, his eyes full of provocation. "You're such a quack. It's not too much to kill you." Su Qingsang couldn't bear it anymore. Before she could do anything, Sun Huiya had already pulled her out of the office. "Director Sun, don't pull me." Sun Huiya was strong enough to drag Su Qingsang back to her office. "That's enough." Sun Huiya sat Su Qingsang down on her seat and said firmly, "You stay here. You don't have to get involved in the rest." "Director Sun, haven't you noticed? If you stay here, the more you get involved, the more trouble they'll make. I don't believe you can't see that they're targeting you on purpose." Su Qingsang stopped talking. What happened today was her fault. She neglected how shameless people could be. She thought that Li Hong would stand up for her like she did at noon and take the hit for her. She thought that Li Hong was really grateful to her. What could be closer than a husband and wife? She didn't care why Li Hong chose to stand against Su Qingsang. What she was thinking about now was how to solve the problem perfectly. She had a feeling that this problem would be much more difficult to solve than the one in Lin City. Director Sunday. I'm not lying. Su Qingsang didn't expect other people to believe her, but she hoped that the people in the hospital and her department would believe her. Director Sunday, believe me, That's enough. Sun Huiya patted her on the shoulder. You don't have to explain. We all believe you. Although Su Qingsang had only been here for a short time, Sun Huiya trusted her character. You're unlucky this time. Go home and rest. We'll see what the hospital will do. Even though Su Qingsang was worried, she could only let it go. She took off her white coat and checked Weibo one more time before leaving the office. Okay. There were thousands of shares and tens of thousands of comments. Now there were tens of thousands of shares and nearly 100,000 comments. This scene was exactly the same as the last time. The only difference was that the last time was in Lin City. This time it was in Rong City. She rubbed her eyebrows and looked at the keyboard users scolding her. Su Qingsang was used to it, but she couldn't help but feel sad. Why did things like this always happen to her? What did she do wrong? She just wanted to be a doctor. She just wanted to be a good doctor. Su Qingsang's eyes were a little sore, but she quickly suppressed that emotion. There was always a way out. She didn't believe that she would always be so unlucky. Hua Jinyao saw the news on Weibo after he got off work. Xiao Hong's case hadn't come to an end yet, but Hua Yifan couldn't help it. He seemed to think that the position of CEO was already in his bag. Hua Jinyao was curious about how Hua Mingguang, who had been quiet and pretended to be deaf, would deal with it. He told Yang Wenchang some arrangements in advance, then told him about Xiao Hong's suspicious points. If Su Qingsang could think of it, he could think of it too. Anyway, there must be something wrong with Xiao Hong, and it was a big problem. After making all the arrangements, he was about to leave when Ding Qing came in. President Hua. Miss Ding, what's up? Hua Jinyao believed what Ding Qing said last time. He wasn't as cold to Ding Qing as he was yesterday. President Hua, I think something happened to Mrs. Hua. What? President Hua, look at this. Ding Qing handed the phone to Hua Jinyao while speaking. I saw the local news just now, so I clicked on it. Hua Jinyao didn't say anything. He looked at the two posts that had been shared tens of thousands of times and thought of what happened in Lin City. In Lin City, Su Qingsang got into trouble because of Su Peijian. More importantly, other than Su Peijian, Li Qianxue was also behind the scenes. But that was in Rong City. Su Peijian wasn't in Rong City, so it was impossible for Li Qianxue to deal with Su Qingsang. President Hua? Yang Wenchang saw it too, and he didn't look happy either. Tell the PR department to take this down from the hot search list. No matter what. Take it down. One more thing. Delete that Weibo post. President Hua, it's useless to delete it now. This is big news. Yeah, it's big news. Is it true? You and I both know that it's not true. Since it's not true, why can't we take it down? Yang Wenchang nodded. He immediately understood what Hua Jinyao meant. President Hua, I understand. I'll take care of it as soon as possible. Keep it under wraps for now. Do it fast. Got it? Yang Wenchang nodded and thought of something else. President Hua, we can delete the Weibo post and keep it under wraps, but the patient's family? Go and talk to them and see what's going on. Hua Jinyao really wanted to know who was so stupid to mess with Su Qingsang again. Thinking about what had happened, Su Qingsang must be in a bad mood. He couldn't sit still and left quickly. Let me know if anything happens. I'm going back now. Yang Wenchang knew that he was in a hurry to go home and comfort Su Qingsang. Yang Wenchang followed Hua Jinyao's order. Ding Qing was left behind, holding the Weibo page in her hand. After a while, a new Weibo post popped up. It was under the previous two Weibo posts. A family member leaked the news. Su Qingsang chased the patient to the ward and insulted the patient. This is really a good piece of news. Unfortunately, Su Qingsang's face couldn't be seen in the video, but her expression must be very interesting. Ding Qing almost wanted to like it. But in the end, she calmly took a screenshot of the new Weibo post and posted the picture. She added a sentence, Hua Jinyao is asking people to delete the Weibo post to suppress the public opinion. After that, she didn't wait for the other party's reply. She also tidied up Hua Jinyao's office. She looked at the picture frame on the desk. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were cuddling in the picture frame. They weren't smiling, but it felt good. Ding Qing flicked her finger on the picture frame. Her phone rang. She picked it up and glanced at it. When she received the message from the other party, she smiled brightly. Now she couldn't wait to see what would happen next. Her eyes fell on the photo of Hu Jingyao and Su Qingsang. She smiled strangely and said, President Hua, I really want to know what you're going to do next. When Hu Jingyao got home, he found that Su Qingsang wasn't in the living room. He went to the room and looked around, but there was still no one there. He frowned and took out his phone to call Su Qingsang, but no one answered. Mizu was almost done cooking. When she saw him coming home, she greeted him, Sir, you're back. Let me serve the dishes and then we can eat. Mizu, do you know where Qingsang is? Mrs.? Mrs. hasn't come back yet. Hu Jinyao's heart was in his throat. What did that mean? Was she still in the hospital? Fortunately, he had saved Sun Huiya's phone number. Now he called Sun Huiya and asked her if Su Qingsang was still in the hospital. Sun Huiya had met Hu Jinyao twice before and felt very good about him. Qingsang asked her to go back first. Isn't she home yet? She might have just left. She didn't answer your call. Maybe she's driving. Why don't you wait a little longer? Okay. I got it. As long as she was fine. Hu Jinyao thought of something and suddenly said, Director's son, can I ask you something? What is it? Don't be shy. Just ask. Can you tell me what kind of punishment Qingsang will face now? Look at what you're saying. The hospital hasn't made a decision yet. As for the specifics, we'll have to wait until the investigation is done. Don't you think so? Okay. I understand. Thank you, Director Sunday. Hu Jinyao hung up the phone. He knew that Su Qingsang couldn't have gotten home so early. Although he was worried, he could only wait. To his surprise, Su Qingsang still hadn't come back after an hour. 2 hours later, Su Qingsang still hadn't come back. It wasn't that Su Qingsang didn't want to go home. She just didn't want to bring her negative emotions home. She couldn't understand what had gone wrong. Why did things like this always happen to her? Was it because the patient's family was too weird, or was it because she was too unlucky? She wanted to tell Hu Jinyao about it, but what would happen after she did? Su Qingsang remembered that Hu Jinyao seemed to be very busy with the company's affairs recently. Why would she bother him with such a small thing? Besides, if Hu Jinyao used extreme measures to make Li Hong change her story, would people believe that it was the truth? In such a short time, Li Hong had changed her words and turned the truth upside down. At that time, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't come out to accuse her again and say that she had changed her words because she was threatened. Without realizing it, Su Qingsang drove back to the small villa that Li Qianxue had bought for her. She didn't know how she got there. The villa was pitch black. Although there were people who came to clean it regularly, it was inevitable that there would be no people in a place where no one lived. She didn't enter the house. Instead, she laid the seat flat and lay there. She didn't know how long she had been lying there. When she was about to leave, she checked the time. She took out her phone and found that there were more than a dozen missed calls. Most of them were from Hu Jinyao. She stared at Hu Jinyao's photo on the screen and finally called him back. Honey, you're not home yet? Yes. Su Qingsang didn't want to lie, so she didn't want to lie to Hu Jinyao. Where are you? Did he get lost? Do you want me to pick you up? No need. I'll be back soon. Su Qingsang didn't realize that she had been lying in the car for nearly 2 hours. Come back quickly. Mrs. Yu's food is getting cold. Through the phone, Hu Jinyao didn't ask or say anything. Su Qingsang smiled. I'll be back soon. If you're hungry, you can eat first. It's okay. I'll wait for you. Okay. Su Qingsang hung up and looked at the other numbers. They were all from Sun Huiya. She thought for a while and called Sun Huiya. Sun Huiya told Su Qingsang that no matter what Zhou Xiaonan and Director Chen asked, Li Hong would insist that Su Qingsang insulted her first. Things were in a stalemate. The hospital was willing to believe in Su Qingsang's character, but things had turned out like this. Chapter 530. That's not entirely true. Sun Huiya shook her head. I've already told the hospital. I said that if we suspend you, wouldn't it mean that we have a guilty conscience? Of course that's not appropriate. The hospital said that they would take another look. So you can still come to work tomorrow. Okay, I got it. Su Qingsang had a minor surgery to do tomorrow. The surgery had already been arranged. That patient had been treated by her before. Even if there was no surgery, she didn't want to rest. Qingsang, you've indeed been wronged in this matter, but don't worry. I believe that things will be resolved satisfactorily. Okay, I know. Su Qingsang hung up the phone. Thinking of Sun Huiya's protection of her, she felt a little touched. Speaking of which, she hadn't been working in Rome City for long, but Sun Huya and the other colleagues in the department had all taken care of her. If possible, she didn't want to leave the first hospital. She started the car again and left the villa. The road ahead was a villa area that had been developed a long time ago, so there weren't many people at night. The Hua family's old house was a little further away from here. It was in another direction and the city was in the opposite direction. Su Qingsang turned a corner in front of her. Just as she was about to drive onto the main road, a figure suddenly rushed out from the side road. It was called a small road, but it was actually an aisle between two villa areas. Su Qingsang was shocked and immediately stepped on the brakes. At this moment, the person also put his hands on the headlights in front of her car. She didn't drive fast, so she didn't touch the person. Before she could react, the figure had already quickly circled to the other side of the car and got into the car. Drive. Su Qingsang's eyes widened as she looked at the familiar facial features in the darkness. She subconsciously stepped on the accelerator. Through the rearview mirror, she could see a few more figures rushing out from the small road behind her. If Su Qingsang stopped the car and took a closer look, she would find that the leader was the mustached man from last time. However, Su Qingsang obviously wasn't in the mood to take a closer look. Her hands that were holding the steering wheel turned white. She also stepped on the accelerator very quickly. The people behind didn't expect that someone would come to their rescue. After running a few steps, they realized that they couldn't catch up. For a moment their expressions were quite ugly. It's okay, they can't catch up. You can relax a little. You don't have to drive so fast. After making sure that the people behind her wouldn't follow her, Su Qingsang finally slowed down at the corner ahead. She finally turned around and looked at the person who got into her car. Zhang Yichen. Last time he was hiding in the hot spring club. Now it was the same situation again and she had encountered it twice. It seems that every time I meet you, your situation is very special? When Zhang Yichen put his hands on the headlights to avoid being hit by the car, he didn't see it clearly because of the reflection. After his eyes got used to the light, he saw that it was Su Qingsang. He could have escaped by another route and his comrades were there too. However, he still got into her car as if he was possessed. Yes, that was right. I got lucky. I meet you every time. Zhang Yichen's words seemed to imply something. Su Qingsang couldn't bring herself to laugh. So according to what you're saying, I'm unlucky? You think it's bad luck that you met me? Su Qingsang nodded and said, that's right. Of course I'm unlucky to have met you. Last time she could have left work and went to stitch up his comrade's wounds. Last time she was enjoying the hot spring but he suddenly came out. And because he had seen her in her swimsuit, Hua Jinyao had bullied her inside and out. If that wasn't bad luck, what was it? Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. He looked at the road ahead. 2 more crossings and they would reach the main road back to the city. Since it's bad luck that you met me, you can drop me off in front. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes and turned to look at him. Uncle, are you angry? I'm just kidding. Even if she really felt that she was unlucky, she shouldn't have said it so directly. Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. He obviously didn't look happy. Su Qingsang felt very uncomfortable. The atmosphere made her feel a little awkward. Uncle, where are you going? Why don't I give you a ride? Since she was already in the car, Su Qingsang didn't mind being a good person to the end. Zhang Yichen thought about his original plan, to get the things and meet up with his comrades. But now he got in her car. It's so late. Why are you here alone? Are you here to see Uncle? No. Su Qingsang thought about the reason why she came here, but she didn't know how to explain it to Zhang Yichen. My mother bought me a house here. I left some things here so I came to get them. Zhang Yichen didn't ask what they were. He looked at the time and said, so you haven't eaten yet? Yes. I was going to go home and eat with Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang looked at Zhang Yichen and said politely, Uncle, have you eaten yet? No. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes. For the first time, she wondered if all soldiers were so honest and straightforward. Well, if you don't mind, why don't we go home and eat together? Hua Jinyao is home anyway. If Hua Jinyao wasn't home, she wouldn't have dared to bring him home. Even though she knew that he was Hua Jinyao's uncle. She only asked out of politeness. If it were someone else, he might have said no. Okay. Zhang Yichen answered without hesitation. Su Qingsang felt that this man really didn't know how to be polite. She just asked casually because he was a relative, but he took it seriously. Ms. Yu usually made 4 dishes and 1 soup. The portion wasn't very big. Hua Jinyao ate a lot. Should she make some noodles later? She had already begun to think that since she had invited the guest to her house, she should treat him well. She was driving now, so she didn't have time to call Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang brought him home directly. While waiting for Su Qingsang at home, Hu Jinyao didn't stop. He kept making phone calls and arranging some things. He also investigated some things. He hoped that he wasn't overthinking things. He felt that this whole thing was very similar to what happened in Lin City. Why did it seem like it was premeditated and targeted at Su Qingsang? Of course, it was also possible that it wasn't premeditated. It was just that she met a very shameless couple who deliberately wanted to blackmail her. Either way, for Su Qingsang, who had just arrived in Rong City and entered the first hospital, it wasn't a good thing. After arranging everything, he felt that there shouldn't be anything left out. Hu Jinyao began to think again. If it was premeditated, then who would do such a thing? When he heard the door open, Hu Jinyao stood up from the sofa. "Honey, you're back. Uncle?" Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang and then at Zhang Yichen. He couldn't connect the two of them together. He looked back and forth between the two of them, then finally returned his eyes to Su Qingsang. "Honey?" When Zhang Yichen saw Hu Jinyao, he took a step forward and said, "Jinyao." "Uncle? I just wanted to come and see you, but I ran into Qingsang, so we came up together." Zhang Yichen knew about Hu Jinyao. Not only did he know, but he had also been here before and even lived here. Now that he put it that way, it made sense. Zhang Yichen explained the situation before Su Qingsang opened her mouth. Su Qingsang glanced at him. She thought that he was probably on a secret mission and couldn't explain it clearly, so she didn't bother to correct him. She put down the car key and changed her shoes. Su Qingsang greeted Zhang Yichen like the hostess of the house. "Jinyao, Uncle hasn't eaten yet. I'll go heat up the food. Sit with Uncle for a while." "Okay." Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang. He wanted to ask her about the hospital, but since Zhang Yichen was here, it wasn't appropriate. Su Qingsang went into the kitchen and quickly came out. She poured 2 glasses of juice. "Uncle, have some juice first. The food will be ready soon." "Thank you." Zhang Yichen sat down on the sofa and watched Su Qingsang go into the kitchen again. Hu Jinyao sat down next to him. "Why did you come to see me? You've been in Rong City a lot these past few months, haven't you?" "I have something to do." Zhang Yichen's voice was calm. He didn't want to explain further. Hu Jinyao didn't need him to explain. "Just pay attention to your own safety." Hu Jinyao thought of what Su Qingsang said last time. Qingsang said that she ran into you last time, and the situation was very dangerous. "I know you don't listen to Grandaunt, not to mention me, but you should be careful. After all, Grandaunt and the others care about you very much." "I know." Zhang Yichen didn't expect Su Qingsang to tell Hu Jinyao about that. He was surprised for a moment but also felt that it was reasonable. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao seemed to be quite close to each other. There shouldn't be any secrets between them, right? Su Qingsang only heated up the food. It didn't take much time. "Jinyao, Uncle, it's time to eat." She was afraid that there wasn't enough rice, so she cooked some noodles. "Do you want rice or noodles?" "Noodles. My wife cooked it. Of course I have to do it for her." There were outsiders here. Su Qingsang glanced at him. Before she asked Zhang Yichen what he wanted to eat, he said, "I'll eat noodles too." Su Qingsang didn't think much of it. Most northerners preferred noodles. Hu Jinyao watched Su Qingsang fill a bowl with noodles and put it in Zhang Yichen's hand. He said proudly, "You got lucky today. I can't bear to let Qingsang cook every day." Zhang Yichen glanced at Su Qingsang, then looked at Hu Jinyao. "Really? Then I'm in luck." "Of course." Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, his eyes full of smiles. There was a gentleness in his smile that he didn't even notice. Zhang Yichen saw it, but he didn't say anything. He picked up the bowl of noodles. It didn't taste very good, but it was a very homely taste. But he really felt that it was the most delicious thing in the world. It was the noodles cooked by Su Qingsang. She was Hu Jinyao's wife. He stopped thinking. Some thoughts couldn't even be thought about. Zhang Yichen looked down and his mood suddenly became gloomy. Hu Jinyao didn't have time to care about Zhang Yichen. He knew that Su Qingsang had been wrong today, so he was more careful with her than usual. He took more care of her. "Here, have some soup. Nourish yourself. You must be tired these days, right? You've been flying around. Here, have a piece of fish to replenish your energy. And this. Ms. Yu's braised prawns are delicious today. Here, I'll help you peel them." As he spoke, he began to peel the prawns for her. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang couldn't help but look at Zhang Yichen. Her uncle was still here. What was he doing? "It's okay." Hu Jinyao put another piece of beef in her bowl. "Uncle, you're one of us. Zhang Yichen tightened his grip on the bowl and sounded a little uncomfortable. You two are so loving. Of course. Hu Jinyao blinked as he spoke. Speaking of which, uncle, you should find one as well. Look at me. I'm so happy. Zhang Yichen looked at Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang sitting together. He put some food in her bowl. She filled it for him. They were a handsome man and a beautiful woman. Hu Jinyao's face was full of love, while Su Qingsang's eyes were full of shyness. The two of them sat there like a perfect couple. Her eyes dimmed a little. Not everyone can be as lucky as you. That's true. Hu Jinyao nodded and put his big hand on Su Qingsang's shoulder. I think I'm very lucky too. Right, wife? Su Qingsang's anger at the hospital in the afternoon had almost dissipated. She glanced at Hu Jinyao and signaled him to stop. Hu Jinyao was a man who didn't know when to stop. He leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Hu Jinyao. His lips were covered in oil. Su Qingsang couldn't help but glare at him. Sorry, I couldn't control myself. Hu Jinyao said that, but he didn't mean that he couldn't control himself at all. While eating, he didn't forget to tell Zhang Yichen about the benefits of having a partner. Uncle, you're a few years older than me. You have to hurry up. You don't have to worry about me. Zhang Yichen suddenly didn't want to continue this topic. He interrupted Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao knew that he always had his own ideas. Normally he would have said it, but today he was in the mood. Uncle, I really don't want to say this, but this is the benefit of being married. Only a married person would be able to tell. Not to mention other things, it's so comfortable to sleep with my wife in my arms on such a cold day. Hu Jinyao. He was getting more and more ridiculous. Su Qingsang glared at him. She looked a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Zhang Yichen didn't react. Otherwise it would be very embarrassing. Isn't there a heater? Zhang Yichen had already eaten most of the noodles. Hu Jinyao didn't know what to say. Forget it. I won't rush you. Let Great Aunt worry about your affairs. Maybe when my son is crawling on the floor you'll still be single. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang glared at him again. Hu Jinyao smiled at her and said, It's okay. Wife. Uncle is one of us. You won't be angry. Right, uncle? Yes. Zhang Yichen nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. After dinner he went back to the living room with Zhang Yichen. Su Qingsang went to clean up the dishes. Although the noodles were cooked, the two men had a big appetite and the food was finished. Su Qingsang didn't expect Zhang Yichen to be so careless. There was still some food left, but he finished it. It was good that he didn't waste food. After cleaning up, she found that Zhang Yichen was still there. She couldn't help but look at Hu Jinyao. Uncle said he was going to stay in a hotel. It's so late, so I suggested that he stay here for the night. There are empty rooms anyway. What do you think, wife? It's so late. We don't need to stay in a hotel. Su Qingsang nodded and said, I'll go get some toiletries. She went to get them while she was talking. There was a special storage room for these things. When she came out, Zhang Yichen was already in the guest room. Hu Jinyao offered to help him with the quilt, but he refused. He was from the army, so he was much faster than Hu Jinyao and the others when it came to housework. It was done in a few seconds. Su Qingsang watched as Zhang Yichen quickly put the quilt back on. Not only that, but he also folded a piece of tofu. Uncle is good, isn't he? Hu Jinyao gave a thumbs up and said, Mrs. Qin, do you think this tofu is flat? Yes, he is good. Su Qingsang didn't mean anything else when she said that. She was just echoing Hu Jinyao's words. I can do it too. I can fold it for you when I get back to my room. Hu Jinyao immediately realized that he was jealous. He put his arms around Su Qingsang's waist, looking like a child asking for candy. Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to him anymore. He was so childish and his uncle was here. He wasn't afraid of being laughed at. Wife, you don't believe me? Hu Jinyao didn't get the praise he expected, so he pulled Su Qingsang's arm. I believe you. I believe you, okay. Su Qingsang's tone was coaxing. Hu Jinyao couldn't stand her perfunctory attitude. Why don't you praise me then? For a moment, Su Qingsang felt that Zhang Yichen seemed to be holding back something. But he held back. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao. Look, he was about to laugh at him. Okay, let's go back to our room. No, you haven't praised me yet. Hu Jinyao hugged her and insisted on a compliment. Zhang Yichen's face darkened even more. Su Qingsang glared at Hu Jinyao. I know. You're good too. My husband is the best. Okay. Su Qingsang said it casually, but Hu Jinyao was satisfied. He didn't care that Zhang Yichen was next to him. He leaned over and kissed her. Honey, you're so good. He liked to show off his affection in public, But Su Qingsang didn't like it. Especially when Zhang Yichen was staring at her, she felt more and more uncomfortable. She gently pushed him away and handed the towel and toothbrush to Zhang Yichen. "Thank you." Zhang Yichen took it and looked at her face, which had turned a little red because of Hua Jinyao's kiss. Calmly he looked away. "It's getting late. Uncle, go to bed early. I'm going back to my room with Qingsang." "Okay." Zhang Yichen nodded and watched Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang leave the room. He didn't go to bed right after they left. He closed the door and stood at the door where Su Qingsang had been standing. Zhang Yichen clenched his fists, thinking of Hua Jinyao's love behavior. His eyes darkened and all the romantic thoughts were thrown away by him. Chapter 531. Su Qingsang had been a little sad and aggrieved in the afternoon. However, after such a long time, all her emotions were gone. She was only tired now. She wanted to take a shower and sleep so that she could go to work tomorrow. As soon as the door was closed, Hua Jinyao carried her in his arms. "Hua Jinyao." Su Qingsang put her hands on his chest. "I'm so tired today. I want to sleep." "Honey." Hua Jinyao was a little annoyed by her insensitivity. He leaned over and gently bit her lips. "I'm not thinking about that right now." Su Qingsang blinked. She really didn't believe Hua Jinyao. This guy was fine during the day. He looked like a human. At night he was like a wolf. Her mind was full of that thing. "I'm not thinking about that. Can you let me take a shower first?" "You can take a shower later." Hua Jinyao put his arms around her waist and carried her to the sofa near the balcony. There was no moon today. From this angle they could see the bright lights in the distance. He put his arms around her waist and sat her on his lap. "Honey, you've worked hard today." "It's nothing." Su Qingsang thought he was talking about Zhang Yichen. "That's your uncle. Besides, she wasn't that tired." "I'm not talking about my uncle." Hua Jinyao turned her body around and made her look at him. "Honey, don't you have anything to say to me?" Su Qingsang was stunned. She met his eyes and found that his eyes were full of her. Her heart seemed to be gently scratched by something. That slight touch touched the softest part of her heart. "Hua Jinyao." She just stared at him blankly, unable to react for a long time. "Honey." Hua Jinyao kissed her on the lips. "Don't you really have anything to say to me?" Su Qingsang knew that he knew everything. However, she didn't want to trouble herself with this. She believed that she could handle it well. "I just want to take a shower now. Is that okay? Don't you want to explain why you came back so late today?" Su Qingsang knew that she couldn't lie to him about anything, and she didn't intend to. "Something did happen, but I think I'll take care of it." Hua Jinyao's eyes were as dark as ink, and Su Qingsang's reflection could be seen in his eyes. "Honey, I know you are very strong and I also know that you can handle it well. But I hope you can rely on me more. Rely on me and let me handle it. What do you think? You'll handle it? How should we deal with it?" Su Qingsang thought of Li Hong's words. "Then you can tell me about it first. I'll listen to what's going on before I decide how to deal with it." Su Qingsang lowered her head. Thinking of Li Hong, she didn't know what to say. Hua Jinyao didn't rush her. He just quietly wrapped his arms around her waist. His chin rested against the top of her hair and he caressed it gently. This was an extremely intimate posture that the two of them had formed. Su Qingsang slowly relaxed in his arms and breath. Actually, she had more or less adjusted her emotions. She had always been good at adjusting herself. However, being held by him like this, she suddenly felt wronged. It was like when a child fell down. If no one comforted him, the child wouldn't cry. If someone comforted him, he would cry even harder. Su Qingsang didn't change her posture. She just put her arms around Hua Jinyao's waist and whispered. She told him everything from the first time she met Li Hong to the day she performed the surgery for her. "I really didn't expect that she would suddenly change her mind and pour such a big bucket of dirty water on me. If I had known, I wouldn't have gone to see her at noon." She went to see Li Hong alone. After listening to her story, Hua Jinyao believed that it was premeditated, which greatly reduced the conspiracy theory. From the looks of it, this should be an accident. "Honey, you are too kind." Su Qingsang shook her head. She didn't think that she was kind. She was a doctor, and doctors should have the heart of a parent. She had thought that Li Hong was a poor girl, so she wanted to visit her. She didn't expect that things would turn out like this. Su Qingsang didn't expect that either. "Don't worry. I'll take care of it." "Oh." Su Qingsang looked at him. "Find Li Hong, threaten her, and force her to tell the truth? That works." "Oh. I'm afraid that it might backfire." "What do you mean?" I mean, Su Qing-sang thought of how Li Hong went back on her words today, so she didn't think it was a good idea. I'm afraid that she'll change her mind again. If that happens, it won't just be my problem. You'll be in trouble too. That won't happen. Hu Jinyao was very confident. I'll let Yang Wenchang handle it. You have to believe in his ability. You have to trust him. I don't doubt you. Su Qing-sang raised her head and looked into his eyes. Her eyes were clear and gentle. But Jinyao, I want to take care of it myself. You? Oh. There must be a way, right? Su Qing-sang hadn't come up with a good idea yet, but that didn't stop her from being optimistic. In any case, the council hasn't given me any punishment for the time being. I also feel that things haven't reached the worst stage yet. Hu Jinyao couldn't agree with her. Doctors and teachers were the two professions that suffered the most misunderstandings. If this kind of misunderstanding happened to someone else, he might not care. However, if this kind of misunderstanding happened to Su Qing-sang, he felt that he couldn't tolerate it. He didn't want Su Qing-sang to be misunderstood like that, not even by thinking about it. Jinyao. Su Qing-sang gently put her arms around his waist. Thank you. But I really don't mind. She might have been angry at first, but after she calmed down, she didn't think it was a big deal. It wasn't the first time she had been misunderstood, and it wasn't the first time something like that had happened to her. She didn't need to care about what those keyboard warriors thought or believed. She just needed to have a clear conscience. She just needed the people she cared about, the people who loved her, to believe her. As for the others, she really didn't need to care about them. Hu Jinyao's phone rang. It was Yang Wenchang. He told Hu Jinyao that he and the people from the public relations department had worked hard for the past few hours and finally removed the trending topic. The related Weibo posts had been deleted as well. The reason for deleting it was simple. False content had to be deleted. See, it's solved, right? Hu Jinyao showed her the Weibo page. All the news related to Su Qing-sang, the so-called quack doctor, was gone. Su Qing-sang didn't expect Hu Jinyao to act so quickly. He must have known about it a long time ago. The tip of her nose was red, a little sore and a little hot. Jinyao. Did I tell you to believe me? Of course it wasn't completely solved. Most importantly, Li Hong was the root of the problem. As long as she didn't cause any more trouble, there wouldn't be any more serious problems. Su Qing-sang didn't say anything. In fact, she had always believed him. All right. Seeing that she was so touched that she was about to cry, Hu Jinyao couldn't help but laugh. He reached out and pinched her cheek. Didn't I tell you? Leave everything to me? See, it's simple, right? It was indeed simple. Su Qing-sang nodded, and a smile suddenly appeared on her face. Actually, these Weibo posts and trending topics. I don't mind. All I want is for you to believe me. As long as he was willing to believe her and stand behind her, she would be satisfied. Silly wife. Hu Jinyao kissed her on the lips. Of course I believe you. You're my wife. Su Qing-sang smiled and rubbed her face against Hu Jinyao's chest. Hu Jinyao. Thank you. With him by her side, even if he couldn't do anything for her, she felt at ease. All those hardships and grievances seemed to have become insignificant at this moment. They were all small things. She was able to adjust her mood. Go take a shower. Hu Jinyao patted her back and said, sleep early. Okay. When she got up in the morning, Su Qing-sang forgot that Zhang Yichen was in the house. She put on some clothes and went to the kitchen in her pajamas. The moment she walked out of the room, she saw Zhang Yichen walking in from outside. She blinked her eyes and lowered her head to look at her disheveled appearance. She quickly turned around and went back to her room. The whole process lasted only a few seconds, but the awkward and uncomfortable look in her eyes, and the way she dodged like a deer, made Zhang Yichen's heart skip a beat. He looked down and went back to his room as if nothing had happened. When Su Qing-sang came out again, only Hu Jinyao was outside. Before she came out, she had checked her clothes again and again to make sure that they were fine. Jinyao. Good morning, wife. I bought breakfast. Let's eat. Okay. Su Qing-sang nodded. She looked at the living room and the guest room. Where's uncle? He said he had a mission. He left. Su Qing-sang didn't say anything. It was better for him to leave. Although there were many beautiful women on the beach in bikinis, Su Qing-sang still felt a little uncomfortable when she thought that an elder had seen her embarrassing appearance. Let's eat. I'll take you to work after that. No thanks. I'll go by myself. Since the Weibo post had been removed and there was no new news, Li Hong was the only one left. The hospital had experience in dealing with medical disputes. They believed that the hospital would find a way to deal with a patient like Li Hong. I'll take you to work. Hu Jingyao was still worried about her. He didn't want something like that to happen again. The Weibo post could be deleted and the trending topic could be removed. However, some reporters could get into every nook and cranny. Yesterday, Yang Wenchang had already given them a heads up in case two blind people showed up. He had to prevent that from happening. Su Qingsang thought for a while and didn't turn him down. She thought that the problem was mostly solved, and the rest was in Li Hong's hands. Both Li Hong and Lin Gang tried to blackmail the hospital when they were pregnant. Maybe it was because of money. As long as the compensation was within their expectations, they wouldn't make a scene. No, they couldn't pay the money. Otherwise they wouldn't be in the right anymore. But if they didn't pay, how could they make Li Hong change her words? How could they settle the matter this time? Don't think too much. While her mind was wandering, the car had already stopped at the gate of the hospital. Fortunately, there were no people at the gate. Su Qingsang patted her chest, feeling that she was too nervous. Hu Jinyao took her hand and squeezed it gently. All right. I said don't be nervous. Call me if anything happens. Okay. Su Qingsang looked around the hospital and thought of the deleted Weibo post. I think the hospital will find a way, right? You don't have to worry about the rest. Of course I have to. You're my wife. Hu Jinyao kissed her on the cheek. The morning light shone into the car and dyed Hu Jinyao's face gold. He smiled and kissed her. His eyes were filled with tenderness. For a moment, Su Qingsang felt that those things weren't important anymore. There was only Hu Jinyao in front of her now. This is what she likes and also her man. Okay. I'll call you if anything happens. But it should be fine now. Go ahead. Under Hu Jinyao's gaze, Su Qingsang entered the hospital gate and went to her department. She walked over and felt the same as usual. There was no difference. It was as if the impulse and the argument yesterday were all an illusion. But the more it was like that, the more flustered Su Qingsang felt. Qingsang, you're here. Zheng Qinyu greeted her when he saw her. Zheng Qinyu had been on leave yesterday and didn't know what happened in the hospital. When he came today, the matter had been settled. Seeing that he seemed to be fine, Su Qingsang was more or less relieved. Morning. Dr. Zheng, have you eaten? No. Are you going to treat me to dinner? Sure. Su Qingsang knew that he had been on leave yesterday. But I do have something for you. I know. There's a gift. Zheng Qinyu smiled brightly. Someone posted it on WeChat yesterday. Ah? Someone posted it on WeChat? Yes. So I've been waiting. Zheng Qinyu's teasing made Su Qingsang feel a little more relaxed. She gave Zheng Qinyu the local specialties that she hadn't given out yesterday. Zheng Qinyu took it, waved it in his hand and smiled at her. Thank you. I'll treat you to dinner next time. As for me, I'm going to have breakfast. Do you need me to bring you lunch? No thanks. I've eaten. Seeing that he was about to leave, Su Qingsang stopped him. Dr. Zheng. Yes. Did anything special happen when you were in the hospital this morning? Anything special? Nothing. It's fine. Su Qingsang shook her head, thinking that the matter might have been solved. Li Hong changed her mind yesterday. Her husband might have encouraged her to do that. Maybe she found her conscience again today? Su Qingsang had to see patients in the morning. She was busy, so she had to put this matter aside. She didn't look at Li Hong. At this moment, she felt that the more she looked at Li Hong, the more Li Hong would react. If Li Hong said more things out of thin air, it wouldn't be good for her and the hospital's image. However, she also asked Sun Huiya about Li Hong's situation. Sun Huiya said that after the drama yesterday, Li Hong felt much better. After they left, she fell asleep again after eating and sleeping well. She had checked her wound during the ward rounds this morning. Su Qingsang handled it well. There was no big problem. Li Hong didn't ask Su Qingsang about it. She seemed to have forgotten what had happened yesterday. Lin Gang, on the other hand, didn't look happy. He asked Sun Huiya a few questions. He said that the hospital wanted to let it go just like that. He said that the hospital was going to cover up for the doctor who insulted the patient. He said that the hospital bullied people like that. Sun Huiya didn't know what to say. Strangely, Lin Gang stopped asking questions after Li Hong glared at him. She seemed to be willing to let it go. Sun Huiya told him what she thought. She couldn't guarantee that was the case, but at least for now it was very likely. No matter what, as long as they don't make a scene and don't pressure the hospital, we won't be in a difficult position. We won't be in such a difficult position. I know. Su Qingsang nodded. As long as Li Hong didn't go back on her word and didn't change her mind, it would be the best result. Sun Huya patted Su Qingsang's shoulder before she left. Qingsang, no matter what, things are under control now. You can relax and do your job well. Su Qingsang nodded. Thank you, Director Sunday. Since the hospital had made their attitude clear, Su Qingsang didn't want to ask any more questions. She had an operation to perform in the afternoon. It was a minor operation, but she still needed time to prepare. She immersed herself in the operation. As a result, he did not notice the changes that had taken place in the outside world in such a short period of time. The afternoon passed just like that. When Su Qingsang came out of the operating room, it was almost time to get off work. She told the patient what to pay attention to and went back to her office. There were still 15 minutes before she got off work. Su Qingsang planned to change her clothes and check Weibo again. However, it didn't open. She was stunned and tried again but still couldn't open it. Su Qingsang had a bad feeling about this. Somehow she didn't want to give up. She kept trying and refreshing again and again. Finally she could open Weibo. Someone knocked on her office door. The person who came in was Li Meilin. She looked anxious and nervous at the moment. Meeting Su Qingsang's eyes, she had to calm down a few times to calm her breathing. Dr. Su, something bad happened. Su Qingsang's heart skipped a beat. She squeezed her phone and looked at Li Meilin. What's wrong? Look at Weibo. Li Meilin saw the phone in Su Qingsang's hand and said in a low voice, Look. You'll know when you see it. Chapter 532. Su Qingsang didn't notice Li Meilin's gaze. She could clearly hear her own heartbeat. She looked down at the Weibo page she had just opened and clicked on the local trending topic. Different from the content that had already been deleted in the morning, this time, almost all the local trending topics were about her. Or it was news related to her. For example, Huajiniao and Tianyu Group. These keywords didn't appear on Weibo, but the article was very suggestive. Why does a doctor who insults a patient still work in a hospital? When medical ethics become empty talk, how can we trust you, doctor? The background of the doctor who insulted a patient. She is the wife of the CEO of a large corporation. The related Weibo posts of the doctor who insulted a patient were all deleted overnight. What's the reason? Hashtag the doctor who insulted a patient. Hashtag this topic was pushed to the top of the local trending topics. Not only that, but all the topics related to this topic were pushed to the top. For example, hashtag the doctor who insulted a pregnant woman caused her incision to split. Hashtag the doctor who insulted a pregnant woman to save a patient. Shouldn't he save everyone? Hashtag the loss of medical ethics. The doctor-patient relationship becomes more tense. Hashtag the doctor insulted a pregnant woman and caused her depression. Almost all of these trending topics had the same topic. There was also a Weibo post that explained the ins and outs of the matter quite clearly. For example, Su Qingsang treated the pregnant woman who tried to blackmail the hospital, and then there were photos of the pregnant woman. Then there were photos and videos of Su Qingsang in the hospital that day. There were photos and videos of Li Hong in the hospital. That day, Li Hong complained in the ward with a pale face. Finally, the camera turned and showed Su Qingsang's side profile. The video had hundreds of thousands of views and reposts. This popularity was similar to that of a celebrity who cheated on her and fell down on the red carpet. Su Qingsang looked at the top 10 local trending topics. 8 of them were related to hashtag the doctor who insulted a patient. These topics were all directed at her. She wasn't the only one who was scolded badly by those who were related to her. Even the entire obstetrics and gynecology department and the entire first hospital were scolded. However, she was the one who was scolded the most. Among them, there was even a Weibo post like hashtag I strongly demand that this scum of the medical world be exposed. The people who posted on Weibo kept asking people to push this post to the top in the comments section. The number of reposts had already exceeded 50,000. Scrolling through the comments, it was all scolding. Go to hell. Scum. Scum. A quack. If he encountered a few rational people who would speak up for him, that person would be besieged by a group of people and scolded even more miserably. The entire Weibo was like a battlefield without any smoke. These news and trending topics were the best at catching people's attention. Following these trending searches and headlines on Weibo, there were even more insults than the last time. Even though Su Qingsang was prepared, she was surprised to see all kinds of curses from the keyboard warriors. Some of them even said that they wanted to find her house. Someone else was coming to the hospital to look for her. There were even people who said that they would stop her midway and pour acid on her. It was many times more exaggerated than when he was in Lin City. Dr. Su. She was still watching, but Li Meilin couldn't bear it. Do you want to leave? But where could she hide to? There are a lot of people outside. There are reporters and the onlookers, the patients and the patients' family members were all crowded outside watching the reporters. Su Qingsang felt her forehead twitch. Looking at the stirring words and pictures on her phone, she smiled at Li Meilin. Meilin, thank you. Dr. Su. Li Meilin looked around and finally said helplessly, why don't you leave from the back door? Su Qingsang didn't know what to do now, but she knew that she didn't want to run away, at least not like this. The phone rang. It was Su Yusin. Sister, what's going on over there? Su Yusin didn't use Weibo much in the past. However, since Su Qingsang went to Rong City, the two of them followed each other's Weibo accounts in addition to their WeChat moments. He was bored today, so he found it in one go. The screen was full of news related to Su Qingsang. When he first saw Su Qingsang's photo, he was surprised. When he looked at the content of the Weibo seriously, Su Yusin almost exploded with anger. Sister, why didn't you tell the family about such a big thing? What kind of people were they? Did they really think that there was no one in the Su family? Even if Su Qingsang married to Rong City, she was still a member of the Su family and the Li family. It's nothing. Su Qingsang could still smile at this moment. It's really nothing. Yusin, you go do your own things. I know what I'm doing. What do you mean by that? Others are already bullying us. Su Yusin couldn't take it anymore. Wait for me. I'll book a ticket now and come over in the afternoon. Yusin. How could Su Qingsang let him come over? Don't make trouble for me. I don't need you to do this. There's still your brother-in-law. Yes. Where's brother-in-law? Su Yusin's voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Such a big thing has happened. I don't believe he doesn't know, right? He knows. He also asked someone to delete his Weibo post yesterday. However, he didn't expect that the more he deleted it, the worse it got. Those people, seeing that the previous Weibo post was deleted, became even more lively. Everyone seemed to be on steroids. Many of those Weibo posts were related to Chanyu Group. Some Weibo posts dug out her identity. The only thing missing was the name of her husband. But this morning, she and Hua Jinyao had been photographed in the car. A small part of Hua Jinyao's face was blocked by her, but if someone paid attention, they would still be able to recognize him. Under the Weibo posts that scolded her, some said that they were rich and heartless, and that they used their power to bully others. Even the things that had happened to her in Lin City were exposed. Zhang Mei, who jumped off a building, Lu Xiangyu, who was abused, and Li Rongrong's matter. She could go through her previous Weibo posts and know that she was wronged and innocent. But now, from these people's mouths, those things were all related to her. Why could she still be a doctor? It was because of the power of a certain group. Which group was this? There was no need to point it out. Everyone could guess. This also made the scolding worse. Many people in Rong City said that she had harmed too many people in Lin City, so she came to Rong City to practice medicine. More people said that they wanted Su Qingsang to go back to Lin City. Since her medical skills and ethics were not good, she shouldn't come out and make a fool of herself. With so many messages, any one of them was enough to make Su Yusin explode with anger. Sister, he deleted it. What am I looking at now? Well, even if you don't let me come to Rong City, I will let our mother come. Su Yusin. Su Qingsang felt a headache coming on. Can you stop making trouble for me? Trust me. Your brother-in-law and I will take care of this matter. But, Mom doesn't use Weibo. She is busy with company affairs. Plus, what happened to Dad made her so unhappy. Do you want Mom to worry about you? Su Yusin didn't say anything. But it felt so bad for his family to be bullied like this. Sister, can you not stay in Rong City? You go home. You go back to Lin City. Anyway, you are familiar with Lin City. If it doesn't work, I will buy a hospital. Okay, stop it. Su Qingsang interrupted. Your brother-in-law called me. I'm going to hang up. Anyway, don't get involved in this matter and don't tell Mom. Su Yusin didn't want to, but he could only leave it at that. After all, Rong City was Hua Jinyao's territory. He believed that he could handle it well. Su Qingsang hung up. This time, the person who called to care about her was Shi Mengwan. She also liked to use Weibo. As a result, she found out that Su Qingsang caused trouble again. Just like how she persuaded Su Yusin, she stopped Shi Mengwan from coming to Rong City. Su Qingsang hung up and thought about her bad luck this time. Dr. Su. Li Meilin was anxious. She didn't expect Su Qingsang to be in the mood to call here. Hurry up and leave. You won't be able to leave later. I'm afraid that those reporters will come to the obstetrics and gynecology department later. Now there were security guards and doctors blocking them, but she was afraid that if there were too many people, they wouldn't be able to block them later. Mei-lin. Thank you. Su Qingsang thought for a moment. Since the main target of those people was her, it was also a way to avoid them for now. However, before she could avoid them, the leader of the hospital office called. It was Zhou Xiaonan who called in person. Dr. Su, where are you now? Come to the hospital office right now. Okay. Su Qingsang hung up the phone, already prepared in her heart. Dr. Su? She also heard Su Qingsang on the phone, and the worry in her eyes increased. Thank you. I'm fine. Su Qingsang patted Li Mei-lin on the shoulder. No matter what, she was very touched that Li Mei-lin cared about her so much. Out of the office, the hospital office was on the other side. Su Qingsang went there. Halfway there, she received a call from Hu Jinyao. Qingsang, where are you? I'm in the hospital. What's wrong? Stay there and don't move. I'll come to you. No need. I'm going to the hospital office now. Director Zhou wants to see me. Okay, wait for me there. I'll come right away. It's okay. I'll leave later. Su Qingsang had already walked to the door of the hospital office conference room as she spoke. Okay, I'll talk to you later. I'm hanging up. Su Qingsang hung up the phone, looked at the white door and took a deep breath. Finally, she pushed the door and entered. There were 2 more leaders in the hospital office than yesterday. Su Qingsang had seen them once before, but she couldn't remember their names. Hello, Director Zhou. Su Qingsang looked at the leaders. It was different from when she was in Lin City. Zhou Hongchen was there, and she was only allowed to go home to rest and wait for the results of the investigation. But looking at the current situation, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to get through the investigation as easily as she did in Lin City. Dr. Su. Zhou Xiaonan was also in a difficult position. No matter how he asked Li Hong yesterday, she wouldn't let him go. She and her husband had a death grudge. Su Qingsang insulted her and caused her wound to open up. The other party was too stubborn, so stubborn that Zhou Xiaonan and the other 2 directors could not find a way to deal with such a tough nut to crack. The hospital knew about Su Qingsang's background. After all, on Su Qingsang's first day at work, Hu Jinyao swaggered into the hospital to support her. Zhao Hongyu, the director of the first hospital, was a friend of old Master Hua. They had met at private dinners. Su Qingsang was the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. If it wasn't necessary, the hospital didn't want to offend her. But the situation in front of them was obviously beyond their expectations. The hospital also had a headache. If they forced Su Qingsang to be suspended, they were afraid that they would offend Tianyu Group. But if they didn't suspend her, the matter was so big, and there were so many reporters and patients' families outside. Look at how big the matter is now. How do you think we should solve it? Su Qingsang stood there without moving. She knew the hospital's concerns. She was no longer the novice doctor who had just graduated. Dr. Su. We all know that you were wronged. But now things have turned out like this, you see. Zhou Xiaonan also felt that he was in a difficult position. How could something like this happen to him? Let him deal with it? He didn't want to offend Tianyu Group. I understand. I understand. Su Qingsang didn't wait for him to finish. Director Zhou, Director Chen, Director Huang, I was wronged. I believe in myself. But I also understand that the hospital needs to explain to the public. I also know that you need to give an explanation to the media and the public. So, I am willing to accept the suspension. I will come back to work after this matter is completely investigated. Look at you. You are so sensible. Zhou Xiaonan looked embarrassed. In fact, if they could, they really didn't want to carry out this decision. Su Qingsang didn't need them to say anything. She could already understand what they meant. She bowed to Zhou Xiaonan. Thank you, Director Zhou. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for the hospital. Dr. Su, don't blame us. We have no choice. Zhou Xiaonan's official tone was smooth. Don't worry, we will definitely believe in your innocence. Now we only need to investigate the matter clearly. When the time comes, we will definitely prove your innocence. Okay. I will also wait for the day when I can prove my innocence. After Su Qingsang finished speaking, she left the hospital office. As soon as she left the door, the calmness on her face immediately disappeared. She had been prepared for the possibility of suspension, but when the punishment really came, she still felt very uncomfortable. She really just wanted to be a good doctor. Why was it so difficult? Su Qingsang walked towards the obstetrics and gynecology department's office. The suspension made her a little distracted. For a moment, she forgot what Li Mei-lin had just said. Before she could get to her office, she was blocked in the hallway by someone. Needless to say, the person was Li Hong's husband, Lin Gang. He was surrounded by many people who seemed to be from various media outlets. Some of them were holding microphones, some were holding recording pens, and some were holding cameras. It's her, it's her. Seeing Su Qingsang, Lin Gang's eyes almost popped out. He pointed at Su Qingsang, his face full of accusation. Reporter friend, it's her. She pushed my wife down and caused her wound to split open. It's her, it's all her fault. Before Su Qingsang could react, she was surrounded by the reporters. In fact, only half of them were reporters and the other half were people called by Lin Gang. Su Qingsang was surrounded by so many people, and the first one was a reporter from the local news channel. Excuse me, are you Dr. Su Qingsang? Do you have any explanation for insulting the patient and causing the patient's wound to open up? Explanation. Explain what? Su Qingsang didn't answer the reporter's question. She wanted to step back, but there were also people standing behind her. Dr. Su, as a doctor, you've said so many inappropriate things and done so many inappropriate things. Don't you think you should apologize to the patient's family? Su Qingsang couldn't step back. She looked at Lin Gang calmly and said, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I apologize? Look. Lin Gang was suddenly excited. He stood in the crowd and pointed at Su Qingsang. So arrogant? Have you ever seen such an arrogant doctor? I haven't seen it before. Such an arrogant doctor. Who is arrogant? Su Qingsang stared at Lin Gang's face. Who is arrogant? Mr. Lin, why don't you tell me what you've done? Doctor, you're threatening people. I'm so scared. Lin Gang shrunk his body as if he was scared by Su Qingsang's words. Su Qingsang wanted to roll her eyes. Did she just say she was arrogant? How did it become a threat? Dr. Su Qingsang, are you threatening the patient's family? Do you know you'll lose your license? Am I threatening them? Su Qingsang looked at the reporter who spoke. He was from a tabloid and didn't seem to be famous. You're a reporter when you haven't learned Chinese well? Why are you insulting people? The reporter was angry. Su Qingsang cleared her throat and said, You have a problem with your understanding. How did I insult you? My friends, do you see it now? Do you see it? Such an arrogant doctor. Not only did she threaten the patient, but she also insulted the reporter. Yes. Why is she so arrogant? Because she has a backer. That's right. But does having a backer mean she can do whatever she wants? We don't admit it. Apologize. We want you to apologize. The people in the crowd spoke one after another, as if they were the ones who were being threatened and insulted. Su Qingsang's forehead twitched. She didn't want to stay here any longer. Excuse me, please. Look, she's trying to leave just like that. Lin Gang and the people behind him stood in front of Su Qingsang on one side, while the reporters and the others stood on the other side. Su Qingsang was surrounded by a group of people and couldn't escape at all. She furrowed her brows. Excuse me, please. This is a hospital. We know this is a hospital. Lin Gang pointed at her and said, I'm afraid you don't know. You're a doctor, but you're treating people indiscriminately. People almost died because of you and you still want to insult people. If you don't give us an explanation today, don't even think about leaving. Yes, that's right. Don't even think about leaving. The people behind him shouted. The corridor of the hospital was completely blocked. The leading reporter looked at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang, let's not talk about the compensation. Shouldn't you apologize for what you said and did? Yes. Apologize. Yes. Apologize. Make her apologize. Apologize. Apologize, apologize. Not only the reporters but the patients' families behind them also shouted. Dozens of people shouted at the same time, asking Su Qingsang to apologize. Su Qingsang stood still. She would never apologize. If she apologized, then what she didn't do would become her fault. How could she allow things to become like that? However, the situation was too chaotic and it was not good for her. She didn't know if the security guards and other people in the hospital were blocked by someone. No one came up at the moment. Su Qingsang took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. She didn't look at the reporters, the families of the patients, or the onlookers. Instead of retreating, she took a step forward and stood in front of Lin Gang. You said that I insulted your wife and caused her wound to open up? Yes. Lin Gang was quite confident. What? You don't want to admit it? Let me tell you, I don't only want you to apologize in person. I also want you to compensate for my wife's loss. Su Qingsang wasn't stupid. She understood what he was saying. To put it bluntly, Lin Gang just wanted money. Then how much money do you think is appropriate? Su Qingsang didn't miss the flash of joy in Lin Gang's eyes. She was waiting for him to make another move. Suddenly, someone pulled Lin Gang's arm hard from behind. Lin Gang seemed to wake up at once. Who wants your money? I don't want your money. I just said that I want you to compensate for my wife's loss. After all, the person who is being hurt because of your actions is my wife. As for us, we have the right to ask you to apologize, don't we? Don't we? He didn't fall into the trap? Su Qingsang glanced at him and then at the person who had pulled Lin Gang's arm. Lin Gang might have done it for money, but what about the others? Why should I apologize for what I didn't do? Su Qingsang knew that this couldn't be settled peacefully, but she didn't want to admit defeat. Mr. Lin, I'll say it again. I won't apologize. I didn't do anything wrong. Lin Gang didn't expect Su Qingsang to be so stubborn even in this situation. He thought of Li Hong's uterus being removed by Su Qingsang and he got angry. He suddenly raised his finger and pointed at Su Qingsang. This quack won't admit her mistake. What should we do? Apologize. 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 Yes, you're right. Apologize. Su Qingsang watched as those people squeezed in front of her. She suddenly realized that she had been too naive and careless this time. She stepped back, but the reporters behind her blocked her way. In front of her was the fierce Lin Gang and the medical troublemakers he had brought with him. The people in the corridor began to shout. No one knew who started it. Su Qingsang saw a fist coming toward her. She was shocked. She wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The fist was getting closer and closer to her face. Su Qingsang knew she couldn't dodge it, so she closed her eyes and prepared for the pain. Chapter 533. Su Qingsang closed her eyes so that she could hear the noises around her more clearly. Footsteps, noises, and the slight sound of the wind. She could even feel the wind brought by the other party's fist as it swung towards her. Stop. With a cold rebuke, someone tugged at her body. The next second, she fell into a warm and firm embrace. Su Qingsang opened her eyes and looked up along the hand on her waist. Jin Yao. She had just told him on the phone that he didn't have to come. But God knew how much she wanted him to come when she thought she was going to be beaten. Jin Yao. Su Qingsang held his arm tightly. She had accepted the result calmly a moment ago, but when she saw Hu Jinyao, she suddenly felt like crying. Hu Jinyao. She had a lot to say, but she couldn't say a word. All she could do was call his name. I'm here. I'm here. Hu Jinyao held Su Qingsang and held her tightly in his arms. Honey, I'm sorry. I'm late. He had long since blocked the fist that was thrown at him. Although there were many people around, Hu Jinyao successfully protected Su Qingsang in his arms with his height advantage. He took her to a corner near the wall. He used his own body and arms to form an excellent shelter, to help her block out all the wind and rain outside. Su Qingsang clutched the front of Hu Jinyao's shirt tightly and buried her face in his chest, trying to ease her agitated emotions. Hu Jinyao let her hold him and glanced at the people in the corridor. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Lin Gang. He knew that it was Lin Gang who had attacked her. But now he was not in a hurry. Some things should be settled slowly. Su Qingsang breathed in Hu Jinyao's familiar scent and slowly relaxed. After she relaxed, she found that it was too quiet around her. She couldn't help but turn around to see what was going on. The chaos in the hallway had completely quietened down. Not only the man who had planned to attack Su Qingsang. Even the reporters and the people that Lin Gang brought with him were now under control. The people who restrained them were all wearing green military uniforms. Su Qingsang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw who it was. Zhang Yichen? Why is he here? Unlike before, this time, Zhang Yichen wasn't wearing his regular army uniform. Instead, he was wearing a very formal military uniform. The two thin golden bars and four-star emblems on his shoulders almost blinded Su Qingsang. She had heard about this uncle from Hu Jinyao. However, she didn't expect him to be a senior colonel at such a young age. Now, the people he brought were divided into two groups, easily separating those people from before. Standing in the middle of the corridor, Zhang Yichen glanced coldly at the people who had been causing trouble just now. We are on a mission. No photos. Carry out a mission? What mission? No one dared to ask in detail. Those who wanted to take pictures put down their phones. Su Qingsang stared at the man with her eyes wide open. She couldn't believe that things had been resolved so easily. Lin Gang was still standing there. He wanted to say something, but when he met Zhang Yichen's eyes, he shrunk his neck and didn't dare to speak. Our senior colonel is in this hospital. Please keep quiet. Now, all unrelated people, please leave the hospital. Thank you for your cooperation. It was polite but also rude. The reporters and the troublemakers looked at each other, speechless. In the end, they all left with their heads lowered. Lin Gang didn't want to leave. He still wanted to cause trouble. However, he knew that he couldn't take advantage of Su Qingsang now. He glared at Su Qingsang. The look in his eyes showed that he wouldn't give up easily. Su Qingsang subconsciously leaned against Hu Jinyao. She never thought that she would provoke such a troublesome person. It's okay. Hu Jinyao put an arm around her shoulder and whispered in her ear, "Leave it to me. I'll help you." Su Qingsang raised her head to look at him. She couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. Hu Jinyao. She didn't want to drag him into this. She had already gotten him into trouble. "Don't worry, honey." Hu Jinyao kissed her forehead. "Trust me. I have a solution." Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line. Shameless people like Li Hong and Lin Gang could go back on their word even if they made a promise. What could Hu Jinyao do? "Honey, you need to learn to trust me more." Hu Jinyao leaned against her ear and said in a very low voice. Su Qingsang looked at him and finally nodded. The crowd in the corridor had already left. What they were doing was quite eye-catching. Zhang Yichen had just asked someone to drive the crowd away. He turned around and saw Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao hugging each other. They acted as if no one else was around. Zhang Yichen frowned slightly but only for a second. He took a step forward and walked toward them. Zhang Yichen met up with his subordinates this morning and received an order for a military exercise. The local troops in Rong City were having a military exercise, and he was sent to guide them. He also took his subordinates there to learn from each other. This kind of exercise couldn't be easier for him. At the end of the maneuver, he planned to return to his unit with his most elite team. He didn't know if it was a coincidence or fate. When he passed by the hospital, he saw many troublemakers outside. He wasn't a nosy person, but he was worried about Su Qingsang. Before he came in, he saw Hu Jinyao's car and hurriedly got out of it. When he saw that Su Qingsang was about to be hit, he was already running in her direction. However, he was still a step slower than Hu Jinyao. Or was it because he saw Hu Jinyao appear, so he deliberately let me be a step late? No matter what the reason was, Hu Jinyao stopped the fist that was about to hit Su Qingsang before he did. He breathed a sigh of relief and felt lucky at the same time. Fortunately, she wasn't hurt. "Are you okay?" These three simple words perfectly hid the concern in the depths of his heart. It sounded like he had to ask because she was Hu Jinyao's wife. "I'm fine. Thank you, uncle." Su Qingsang calmed down and realized that she was hugging Hu Jinyao in the corridor of the hospital. She blushed and quickly moved away from Hu Jinyao's arms. "It's okay for now." Hu Jinyao held Su Qingsang's hand and called the police. However, they obviously didn't come as fast as Zhang Yichen. "Thank you so much for today." Zhang Yichen shook his head and glanced at Su Qingsang. Her face was pale a moment ago, but now, under Hu Jinyao's comfort, her face returned to normal. She seemed to be a little embarrassed to show off their affection in public. Hu Jinyao held her hand, but she kept trying to pull it away. However, Hu Jinyao held her hand so tightly that she couldn't break free. She couldn't help but look at Hu Jinyao, but he didn't seem to notice her gaze at all. In the end, Su Qingsang felt a little helpless. She gently scratched Hu Jinyao's palm. Hu Jinyao held her hand even tighter because of this. The movement between them didn't seem obvious, but it was full of intimacy. Zhang Yichen was a soldier, so his five senses were much more sensitive than ordinary people. He couldn't help but glance at their hands, which were held together. Noticing Zhang Yichen's gaze, Hu Jinyao raised Su Qingsang's hand. "Uncle, are you jealous? If you're jealous, go find one." Zhang Yichen pursed his lips and completely ignored Hu Jinyao's words. Su Qingsang glared at Hu Jinyao. This man really knew how to make people feel awkward. Most of the people had left, but there were still doctors and nurses in the corridor. They wanted to come over but couldn't. At this moment, they all opened up a path, allowing the people behind them to walk this way. After such a long time, people from the hospital administration and Director Zhou Xiaonan finally heard the news and rushed over. Zhou Xiaonan walked to Su Qingsang as soon as he arrived. "Dr. Su, are you all right?" "I'm fine. Director Zhou, I'm sorry to have made you worry." Zhou Xiaonan looked Su Qingsang up and down to make sure that she was indeed not injured. Then he was more or less relieved. "I'm glad you're fine. I'm glad you're fine." Director Zhou was still discussing with the hospital administration about how to solve the problem when he heard that a group of reporters was fighting downstairs. When they hurried over, the conflict was already over. In fact, many doctors wanted to come over and stop them, and they did try to stop them. However, there were too many of them and they couldn't do anything. If they did, the situation would be completely different. Therefore, the other doctors standing in the corridor could only try to pull those people away. However, because the number of people was too large, they failed. Now, seeing that Su Qingsang was fine, they were also relieved. In fact, everyone knew what was going on. Everyone was talking about how evil doctors nowadays were, how bad their medical ethics were, and how they only wanted to make money. However, God knew that doctors nowadays were becoming more and more difficult. Patients could make a big fuss over small things. Now that the problem was finally solved, everyone was relieved. They thought that the problem was solved. Wu Jinyao didn't. He looked at Zhou Xiaonan with obvious dissatisfaction in his eyes. Director Zhou, right? Is this how your hospital treats your doctors? That's right. Qingsang hasn't been here for long, but I'm sure you've seen her performance over the past 2 months at the first hospital, right? Of course he would do his best to protect his wife. I've seen it. Zhou Xiaonan felt sweat on his back. This time it's our fault. Of course it's your fault. Hu Jinyao thought that if he had come a minute later, Su Qingsang would have been beaten up. He couldn't help but be angry. It's obvious that Qingsang was wronged. Not only did you not help her seek justice and prove her innocence, but you also let those medical troublemakers come to your door and make a scene in the hospital like this. Did you think that firing or suspending Qingsang would solve the problem? Not only was Zhou Xiaonan's back sweating, but sweat was also dripping down from his head. Especially when he saw Zhang Yichen standing next to him, he regretted it even more. They couldn't afford to offend Tianyu Group. Now, there was another immortal who she did not know where he came from. I'm sorry. We will definitely give Dr. Su an explanation for this, but please understand. Because they made a big scene. You know that. Zhou Xiaonan didn't finish his sentence, but Hu Jinyao understood what he meant. They didn't want to punish Su Qingsang, but as long as Lin Gang and Li Hong insisted that Su Qingsang insulted them and caused Li Hong's wound to open, that wouldn't be the end of it. Of course, the hospital could let Su Qingsang continue to work, but would the hospital be able to convince the public? Would the patients and their families accept it? These were all problems and they would cause the hospital trouble in the future. Even if they didn't punish Su Qingsang, how could Su Qingsang continue to work in the first hospital if the problem wasn't solved? After all, she was a doctor. How could she continue to be a doctor if she was criticized for having no medical ethics? Wu Jinyao wanted to curse. She had to go back to her old job after all. They believed that Su Qingsang didn't do anything wrong, but they still had to punish her. Considering that Su Qingsang still had to work in the first hospital, he didn't go too far. Director Zhou, I understand you and so does Qingsang. Don't you need to prove the truth to the public? Don't the public want to know the truth? How about this? Give me 3 days. In 3 days I will prove Su Qingsang's innocence. Thank you, Mr. Hua. Zhou Xiaonan finally relaxed and smiled. Don't worry, as long as the public believes it, we will let Dr. Su come back to work. What he meant was that even if it wasn't the truth, as long as the public believed it, the problem at hand would be solved. Let Dr. Su rest at home for the next 3 days. Okay. Wu Jinyao nodded. I hope you can understand that Qingsang was wronged. Of course. Of course. Zhou Xiaonan looked at Su Qingsang as he spoke. Dr. Su, you have a good rest at home. You can come back to work after these 3 days. He didn't say how the problem would be solved. The hospital also had a headache. In the past, when there was a medical dispute, they had to give a sum of money to settle it. But this time, if they really gave money, it would give the public the truth. They weren't stupid and they didn't want that to happen. Thank you, Director Zhou. Su Qingsang was actually quite grateful to them. At least they didn't ask her to go home as soon as she came. At least they were willing to believe her. Zhou Xiaonan wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead, knowing that they didn't handle it well this time. But now they couldn't find a better way to deal with it. They couldn't offend Tianyu Group, but they also had to consider the public's opinion. While they were talking, the police arrived. They came a little late. The problem was over. They asked about the situation and recorded statements. Then they found Lin Gang and asked about the situation. Lin Gang wouldn't admit that he was a medical dispute patient. He only said that someone behind him pushed him. As for whether he did anything or not, he wouldn't admit it. That's impossible, sir. How could I dare to hit a doctor? He really didn't do anything. He just asked someone else to do it. If someone else wanted to do it, it had nothing to do with him. That's good. If you have any objections to the hospital's treatment, you can appeal in other ways. But I hope you understand that medical dispute is against the law. Yes, yes, yes. We all know that. Don't worry. We won't break the law knowingly. The police intimidated them for a while and then left. This farce was over for the time being. But everyone knew that it wasn't over yet. They couldn't delete Weibo now. The more they deleted it, the more counterproductive it would be. Su Qingsang was sitting in Hu Jinyao's car. They had just parted ways with Zhang Yichen. Zhang Yichen had asked her a few questions out of concern, but he didn't say much after learning what had happened. He only told Hu Jinyao that the trouble was probably not directed at Su Qingsang, but at Hu Jinyao. Lin Gang and Li Hong didn't go after Sun Huiya, the department director, but Su Qingsang, a junior doctor. Everyone would think that something was wrong. Hu Jinyao had guessed it, but it was rare that Zhang Yichen had the same idea. All right, uncle. Thank you. I know you care about me. Don't worry. I can handle it. Thinking of all the things that had happened in the company recently, Hu Jinyao had reason to believe that both Qiao Hong's trouble and Su Qingsang's trouble were caused by the same person. They thought that he was busy with the company, so they wanted to mess with Su Qingsang first. Then he would be distracted and wouldn't be able to keep an eye on Qiao Hong's trouble. That was a good idea, but it was a pity. That person's plan was doomed to fail, because he had already figured out how to fight back. I'm glad you know. Zhang Yichen looked at Hu Jinyao with a serious face. He wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't. Since everything is settled, I'll go back now. Okay. Thank you for today. Hu Jinyao wasn't being polite. Su Qingsang also said, "Thank you, uncle." Zhang Yichen glanced at her and nodded slightly as a response. He didn't linger but went back to the team with his subordinates. Sitting in the car, Zhang Yichen looked at the passing scenery on both sides of the road. He knew that he had taken on a new mission, so he wouldn't come to Rong City for a while. He didn't have to guess to know that the trouble this time was aimed at Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang was just suffering from an undeserved disaster. The Hua family's situation wasn't that complicated, but everyone in the family had their own thoughts. With Su Qingsang's personality, she must have suffered a lot, right? If he had been the one to marry such a beautiful and intelligent girl, he wouldn't have let her suffer. Boss, what are you thinking about? His subordinate's voice brought Zhang Yichen back to his senses. He realized that he was thinking about the impossible again. His face was a little gloomy. Boss. Zhang Yichen shook his head and didn't say anything. Those thoughts were once again fiercely suppressed by him. But some things were like that. The more he tried to suppress it, the more it would rebound. Chapter 534. Su Qingsang was sitting in Hu Jinyao's car. She was still a little scared when she thought about how she was almost beaten up. Thank you so much for what you did today. Su Qingsang knew that even if Zhang Yichen hadn't come, the problem would have been solved. However, Zhang Yichen had played a big part in helping those people leave so quickly and easily. Yeah. I'll buy him dinner later. She didn't know when Zhang Yichen would come back to Rong City after he returned to the army. Hu Jinyao thought about the look in Zhang Yichen's eyes and felt a little weird. In the past, Zhang Yichen's uncle had always been a talkative person, but these days Zhang Yichen didn't seem to like talking much. Was it because he was too tired from the mission? Well, you can invite me when you buy him dinner. You helped me after all. Hu Jinyao didn't object. The weird feeling disappeared because of Su Qingsang's words. Perhaps he was really thinking too much. Su Qingsang looked out at the gradually darkening night sky and thought of the topics related to her that were still on the hot search list. She felt a little down. Noticing her reaction, Hu Jinyao reached out and gently patted the back of her hand. Honey, I said 3 days, so it will be 3 days. Don't worry. How can I not worry? Su Qingsang looked at his chiseled face and said, people like Lin Gang and Li Hong are unreasonable. What can you do as long as they don't admit it? When the police went to record Lin Gang's statement, both Zhou Xiaonan and Director Chen had followed them to watch. They heard what Lin Gang said. He wouldn't let it go so easily. He said he would appeal to the higher authorities and make Su Qingsang pay. Lin Gang said he would appeal to the higher authorities. He won't let me go. That depends on whether he can do it or not. Su Qingsang looked out of the window and didn't notice a flash of anger on Hu Jinyao's face. Tell me, how do you want to deal with unreasonable people like Li Hong and Lin Gang? Honey, I think you're too concerned about them. There was a red light ahead. Hu Jinyao stopped the car and squeezed Su Qingsang's palm. Haven't you ever thought about one thing? What? Su Qingsang turned around. Hu Jinyao looked at her with gentle eyes. This time I was a little too hasty. He asked someone to delete the Weibo account, However, no matter how big the news was, it would still be popular for a certain period of time. As the popularity died down, no one paid attention to it anymore. Right? Secondly, that person said he was going to appeal and sue you. Does he have proof? Su Qingsang furrowed her brows. She had been neglecting this crucial point. There was no one else in the ward at that time, so no one made the decision for her. But in the same way, if no one testified for her, would anyone testify for Lin Gang? He can say that you insulted the patient, but you can also say that he insulted the doctor. Two mouths for one matter. It all depends on what you say. What do you think? Lin Gang could only accuse others with his mouth. Now, those people believed that he was bewitched and his emotions were stirred up. There would always be someone who was rational. When those people came to their senses and calmed down, they would realize that this matter was just a farce. Seeing the red light in front of him change color, he stepped on the accelerator again. His last sentence was almost a whisper. However, I don't plan to let this matter drag on for too long. Although he didn't mention any names, even Chanyu Group was brought into the topic. Wu Jingyao was a very sensitive person. As early as this afternoon when the Weibo post came out, he had already sensed that something was wrong. This time it wasn't Su Qingsang that they were going to deal with, but him. The Weibo post continued to grow, but Su Qingsang and Hu Jingyao didn't pay attention to it anymore. The two of them returned home. Su Qingsang took a shower and changed into a set of comfortable clothes. When she came out, Hu Jingyao was talking on the phone. She didn't ask who he was calling. Anyway, this was what happened now. She just needed to trust him. At night, Su Qingsang lay on the bed and looked at Hu Jingyao, who had just come out of the bathroom. She said, "I'm not going to work tomorrow. I'll go back to the old house to visit Grandpa." Okay. Wu Jingyao thought of something else. You have 3 days off. You can also go back to Lin City to visit your mother. Spend some time with your grandfather. When you come back, I'll definitely solve the problem. He asked Su Qingsang to go to Lin City so that she could avoid it. Su Qingsang didn't have that idea. She watched as Hu Jingyao walked to the bed and sat down. She pulled his hand and placed it in her palm. I'm not going back to Lin City. You're not going to see your mother? If you want to see my mother, you can do it anytime. But now, I want to be with you. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jingyao with watery eyes. She wasn't a fool. After such a long time, she had probably seen through some things. Even if Hu Jingyao could solve it at this stage, she wanted to be with him. She leaned against the pillow. The dim yellow light of the bedside lamp made her face look as gentle as water. Her small hand gently held his hand. Hu Jingyao held her hand in his palm. He put it to his lips and kissed it gently. He didn't speak and she didn't speak either. The two of them looked at each other. In their eyes they could only see each other's shadows. With a bow sound, Hu Jingyao left a kiss on her lips. But he didn't do anything else. He turned around and got on the bed, lying down beside her. He held her in his arms. Su Qingsang pressed against his chest and found the most comfortable position in his arms. She wrapped her arms around Hu Jingyao's waist. Su Qingsang's voice was especially soft. Hu Jingyao. I think I might not be able to fully understand the operations of your company. I might not be able to help you in business like other women. But I think I can be with you. No matter what happened, no matter what she had experienced in the past, and no matter what would happen in the future. She might not be able to help, but she was willing to be with him. Hu Jingyao buried his face in her neck and smelled the faint fragrance of her neck after a bath. Okay. His words were a promise. Su Qingsang smiled and closed her eyes. Hu Jingyao got up early the next day and left. Su Qingsang didn't sleep for long either. Even though she was in a whirlpool now, she believed that everything would be fine. Just like the previous few times. According to her original plan, she went to see Old Master Hua. She hadn't sent the gift she bought in Lin City to Old Master Hua yet. Old Master Hua was very happy to see her. Qingsang, you're here? Don't you have to work today? He was old, so it was naturally impossible for him to use Weibo. So he didn't know about Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang didn't intend to tell him. She took out the gift that Li Qianxue and Old Master Li had prepared. Old Master Hua was very happy. Your grandfather is too polite. I must go to Lin City to see him when I have the chance. Okay. My grandfather also wants you to go. Definitely. Definitely. Old Master Hua laughed heartily. I'm not completely old yet. While I'm still young, I want to travel around and see. Grandpa, you're not old at all. You only know how to make me happy. I'm not making you happy. Grandpa looks very energetic. Old Master Hua smiled even more brightly. Su Qingsang also brought two other gifts. One was for Hua Mingguang and the other was for Lu Tongjia. They were both picked out by Li Qianxue. It wasn't about how expensive it was, but it was just a thought. It was also very coincidental. Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia were also at home today. Hua Mingguang had a lot of things to do in the company recently. He had a dinner party yesterday, so he came home late and naturally got up late. Lu Tongjia had an appointment with someone to play basketball today, but when she was about to leave, that person suddenly had something to do and didn't show up. Lu Tongjia's expression didn't look good after being stood up. When she went downstairs and saw Su Qingsang, her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and her expression became even uglier. Hua Mingguang didn't have any special reaction. When Su Qingsang saw them, she immediately stood up. That, Auntie. In fact, this kind of address sounded very strange. It felt as if Lu Tongjia was Hua Mingguang's second wife. Lu Tongjia didn't hear anything wrong before, but this time she felt that something was wrong. Dad, I went back to Lin City a few days ago. This is the gift my mother and grandfather chose for you. Okay. Thank you. Hua Mingguang took the box and didn't open it, but he accepted it. Su Qingsang also handed the other box to Lu Tongjia. Auntie, this is the gift my mother chose for you. Lu Tongjia glanced at the beautifully packaged box. She quickly turned her face away and didn't look at Su Qingsang at all. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed, but she still pushed the box a little closer to Lu Tongjia. Lu Tongjia didn't respond. Hua Mingguang glanced at her with a somewhat disapproving expression. Only then did she reach out and pick up the box. Aunt Zhou, who was helping in the kitchen, came out with fruits and tea. Aunt Zhou, this is for you. Lu Tongjia picked up the box and handed it to Aunt Zhou in front of Su Qingsang. Aunt Zhou was stunned for a moment. She had seen clearly just now that this was a gift from young master's sister to Madam. Su Qingsang didn't expect Lu Tongjia to embarrass her so directly. Although she wasn't surprised for a long time, she still wouldn't be happy that something she had given out was directly given to someone else like this. Old Master Hua's brows were tightly knitted. He looked at his daughter-in-law with some dissatisfaction in his eyes. Tongjia. Hua Mingguang, who saw his father's mood, touched Lu Tongjia's arm. Lu Tongjia raised her eyebrows and looked calm. What? Can't I? Since she gave it to me, it's mine. It's mine. Don't I have the right to deal with it? She was right and no one could refute it. Su Qingsang didn't feel hurt, but she was more or less uncomfortable. However, everyone present was an elder. In the end, she chose to look down at her fingertips and didn't say a word. Old Master Hua's forehead was so wrinkled that it could almost squeeze a shadow. Hua Mingguang also had a faint expression of disapproval on his face. Lu Tongjia handed the box to Aunt Zhou again. Aunt Zhou has been working in our family for so many years. She cooks delicious food and is diligent. It's not too much for me to give her a gift, is it? No one responded to Lu Tongjia, even if it wasn't too much. But she could always do it in private. Tongjia? Old Master Hua's face was now very long. It was obvious that he was unhappy. Hua Mingguang wanted to say something, but Lu Tongjia stood up and stubbornly put the box in Aunt Zhou's hand. What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Since when do I not even have the right to deal with a gift from a junior? Am I still the mistress of this family? No one answered. Even Old Master Hua didn't say anything at this time. In the past 10 years, ever since his wife passed away, Old Master Hua also admitted that Lu Tongjia was still capable. She took care of the Hua family in an orderly manner. She could also be called Hua Mingguang's good wife. The reason why Hua Mingguang was able to put all his energy into business and run Tianyu Group to where it was now was also because of Lu Tongjia. Old Master Hua didn't say anything. He glanced at Su Qingsang with a guilty expression. Aunt Zhou was still holding the box in her hand. She stood there not knowing whether to accept the box or not. Seeing this, Su Qingsang smiled and said, Aunt Zhou, it's okay. Since it's a gift to you, just accept it. Aunt Zhou smiled a little awkwardly. She didn't want to get involved in the fight between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. She bowed and left. Lu Tongjia sat down again opposite Su Qingsang. Her cold eyes swept over Su Qingsang's face. It seems that I will soon lose my place in this family. I even have to give a gift to someone else. Really? She didn't say anything else, but there was no need to say it. Tongjia. Hua Mingguang tugged at Lu Tongjia's sleeve to stop her. Lu Tongjia's expression was unfriendly, but she didn't say anything else. Because of this matter, the atmosphere in the living room suddenly became a little strange. Old Master Hua looked at Su Qingsang and felt a little guilty. Qingsang was a good girl, but she married Hua Jinyao. However, Hua Jinyao didn't like Lu Tongjiao. Alright, Qing Sang. The jade you gave her has been very noisy recently. Old Master Hua changed the topic. Su Qing Sang stood up and said, "That's good. I'll go and see it. I'll go with you." Old Master Hua didn't want to stay here to face Lu Tongjiao. After so many years, he understood Lu Tongjiao's psychological shadow. However, some things were one thing to understand and another to accept. When they went out of the door, the parrot was indeed chirping. It was very noisy. Seeing that Su Qing Sang and Old Master Hua had gone out, it stopped chirping and turned its face away. Old Master Hua looked at the bird. When it was a bird, it chirped loudly, but when someone came, it was cold and aloof. It's really funny for a bird to be like this. Old Master Hua saw that Su Qing Sang didn't seem to take what had just happened to heart at all. He was more or less relieved. Qing Sang. Jinyao's mother, she actually wasn't like this before. Before? This was the first time that Su Qing Sang had heard the Hua family mention the past. She looked at Old Master Hua and couldn't help but look a little nervous. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.